Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular meeting of the DeKalb City Council, September 10, 2018. Prior to our roll call this evening, I'd like to remind folks in the audience, anyone who would like to speak to any item, either items that are on the agenda or, for that matter, any item that you might like to address the council on that is not on tonight's agenda, we'd ask that you kindly fill out a speaker request form. They're found in the back of the room. Please give those to either Lynn Fazekas, our city clerk, or her chief deputy, Ruth Scott, and we'll see that they get up there, and I'll try to get you on in the order in which the agenda is stated tonight. With that, I'd like to ask City Clerk Fazekas to call the roll, please.
Jacobson.
Here.
Finucane.
Here.
Marquardt.
Here.
Fagan.
Here.
Noreko. Here. Verbeek.
Here.
Favor.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. I'd like to call Police Officer Keith Erke forward to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Keith?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to, for those of you who are following along with your printed copy, we are now on C, approval of the agenda. We will see if there are any additions or deletions to the agenda. If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. No further discussion. I'd like a roll call, please.
Finucane.
Yes.
Marquardt.
Yes.
Fagan.
Yes.
Noreko. Yes. Verbeek.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Thank you. We have one public hearing scheduled for tonight, and I'd like to ask our Economic Development Planner, Jason Mitchnick, to speak to this item, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. As part of the consideration of creating a new TIF district, the process of designating a new TIF is very prescriptive per the Illinois TIF Act. And one of the requirements before the council can take consideration for the of the ordinances that would establish that TIF district is to hold a public hearing. And prior to that, there is also a requirement to hold a meeting of the Joint Review Board, which was held first on August 7th. Prior to the public hearing, the Joint Review Board is supposed to have an opportunity to provide a formal recommendation to Council. On August 7th, the Joint Review Board, there was a motion made to continue that meeting again until September 4th. The Joint Review Board did meet again on September 4th and was unable to come to a determination on a formal recommendation, and met again once again on Friday, September 7th. On Friday, there was a request from the Joint Review Board to continue that conversation for another 30 days so that the taxing districts in the city could further discuss some issues and consider a formal recommendation. Given the recommendation of the Joint Review Board to continue it, Council and the staff is requesting that we would open the public hearing and then continue the public hearing until the first meeting in October so that we can continue to work with our partners at the other taxing districts.
Please note that I opened the public hearing at 6:17 p.m. There was consensus at the last meeting of the Joint Review Board that we do recommend that we move the public hearing to our first meeting in October. That will fit just beyond the 30-day period of time during which we will have time to discuss with our other taxing partners some of the issues brought up regarding the TIF and regarding the establishment of a possible third tax increment finance district. I'm told by our legal counsel that I could simply move this, but I'd like to, to get a sense of our city council a buy-in on this, I'd like to move that we continue this public hearing to October 8th.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
And just for clarification, Mayor, that would be at the regular city council meeting at 6:00 p.m. here in the council chambers.
That'll be at the regular city council meeting, council chambers, October 8th, 6 o'clock, at pretty much the same place on the agenda as we would have had our public hearing tonight. It's been moved and seconded that we continue our public hearing to October 8th. Roll call, please.
Marquardt.
Yes.
Fagan.
Yes.
Noreko.
Yes.
Verbic.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Fanouken.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Thank you very much. Please note that our public hearing has been continued. It's 6:21. Okay, moving along on to tonight's agenda, special items or presentations and citizens' comment. We have one item for Proudly DeKalb this evening. I'd like to call upon Brad Hoy of the NIU Athletics Department to make a short presentation on this segment of Proudly DeKalb. Brad?
Thank you, Mayor Smith and City Council. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and to those in the audience about what we have going with NIU athletics here in the fall campaign, at least, and in the future. As many of you know, I've worn many hats at NIU over the nearly 28 years that I've been employed there, and I've been involved in many things in the community. But all the time, during that time, I've had some affiliation with Husky Athletics, and it's great to be a part of that team on a full-time basis. So I want to thank those of you who were able to attend our Husky football season opener this past Saturday, September 8th, against University of Utah. Obviously, the outcome is not what we had hoped, but I think you saw a very spirited performance by NIU, particularly on defense, against one of the favorites in the Pac-12, which is one of the top Power 5 conferences in the NCAA football bowl subdivision. So we have a very difficult non-conference schedule, and if you want to compete with the big boys and go to the Orange Bowl and some of the other big-time bowl games, you've got to play against them, whether that's on the road or at home. And so when we get a big-time opponent at Husky Stadium, like a Utah or like BYU or some other teams that are coming down the road, we need to pack the house. So I appreciate the fans that showed up there. We had close to 17,000 fans. We need you back for every game this season. We've got the MAC schedule coming up. We have an outstanding team coming in. We start that schedule this Saturday against Central Michigan. So we'll need folks to be out there at 2:30 p.m. We've got a great environment. I think those of you who were at the game saw that environment at firsthand, and you've seen it throughout the years. So it's family weekend. We're going to be welcoming many families of our NIU students to the DeKalb community, and I'm so excited the fact that when you go down Lincoln Highway or you're coming in from other points and destinations, you see those terrific banners that we put up in the summer that have the NIU institutional logo, the athletic logo, and of course Proudly DeKalb. And I think that that's a very visible sign to our faculty, to our staff, to our current students, and to our prospective students that we are a community that welcomes people, that are a welcoming community, and that is one that is essentially your home for 3, 4, 5, I won't go more than that, years as a student. And hopefully you may decide to live here and make DeKalb your home for the rest of your life. So we're looking forward to that. We've got a lot of community partners involved in that. The Park District is one. We've got Jonah Mac Orchard, Whiskey Acres. You get a chance to camp on the West Lagoon, so families can do that if they want to this weekend. You get the Elwood House has programming, the Egyptian Theater. You can even paddle the Kish. So there's going to be a lot for our families to do during family weekend. You know, we're involved in a lot of other things going on with Husky Athletics. One of the things that I'm most proud of, and I was just talking to a few other folks in the audience, is about the community service that our student athletes are able to provide. And one perfect example of that was during the summer, we had a number of our student athletes involved in Camp Power. So when the campers came over to our athletic facilities, I think almost all of our student athletes who were on campus this summer engaged with them during that time. And they've been doing that for a few years, and we'd like to continue that relationship for a long, long time. The other thing that was very cool this past weekend, obviously, we had Dekalb Fest. I think many of you know that I'm very involved with the DeKalb County Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we had 4 or 5 of our student-athlete teams participate as volunteers. If any of you are a part of a community organization and you want to get NIU students or student-athletes involved in some of your volunteer events, you can contact me, or you can go to our Student Involvement and Leadership Development website, or our Student Athlete Academic Support Services, SAS for short, website. You can fill out a form. Or you can come to me and I'll help you with that. But it's a great way to showcase to our students how important community service, how important it is to get involved with community organizations, or to serve as an elected official or on a council or on a commission within our own community, to make a difference, not only when you're here going to school, but throughout your lives, no matter where you head after graduation from NIU. So one other thing I'd like to finish up with is we've got a big event that we're partnering, the university's partnering with the local community, and that's the DeKalb Corn Classic. 10K race coming up on September 23rd. It's a new date this year, and I know we're looking forward to having a lot of folks, not only from within the community, but outside the community, coming into DeKalb. Much of the race course will be going through campus, and a part of it will go through Husky Stadium. And so we plan to have the NIU band there. We have some NIU student athletes, I think as many as 400 of them involved as volunteers, and we'll even have some messaging up on the video board if I have anything to say about it during that time. So again, thank you for allowing me a few minutes to talk about what we have going on with NIU athletics, not only here in the immediate future, but throughout the year, and I hope to see you out at Husky Stadium, and check out the Convocation Center for NIU basketball when we have that brand new video board go in operation in just a few weeks. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and go Huskies.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah, NIU athletics certainly part of Proudly DeKalb. Thank you, Brad. Our next special item is a update on our Annie Glidden North Revitalization Plan Task Force. As you know, our 2 council liaisons, 1st Ward Alderman David Jacobson, 2nd Ward Alderman Bill Finucane, and I know they have some exciting news about our AGN North Revitalization Plan Task Force.
We do have a task force meeting coming up here on the 12th at 5:30 at the county building. It will be the opportunity for all of the task force members to get together and effectively give some indication of where they'd like to go with some of the draft recommendations back to council. We're hoping all of the task force members can make it to this one. It's a vitally important meeting for them, and certainly invite any other community members to attend to listen in on what's going on with the plan and what the recommendations of those individual subcommittees and members are ready to provide for us.
As I'm sure you have, I've had an opportunity to take a sneak peek at the plan, and you know, there's something I think they call the Big 8, which are 8 specific developmental plans coming out of the AGN task force, and I think that's going to be exciting. It's going to certainly create some fodder for further discussion, but it's also going to give us the opportunity to dig our teeth into some of the specific recommendations, and hopefully those will help to attain the goals that we had when we formed the task force almost a year ago. So David and Bill, thank you for your leadership on that. Bill?
Just a real quick clarification so we're clear on which building the conference or the meeting will be in. It's the community building at the county campus on Annie Glidden Road.
Right, it's the County Outreach Building, and it is in the West Conference Room, I believe.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we have a special presentation tonight on the Kishwaukee YMCA Camp Power FY 2018 Human Services Funding Annual Report. And with that is the CEO of our YMCA, Mark Spiegelhoff. Mark?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, city staff, and certainly guests out in the audience. Again, my name is Mark Spiegelhoff, and I serve as the CEO of the Kishwaukee Family YMCA. And I'm really pleased to be with you here tonight to give you a brief, and I emphasize brief, report on our 2018 Camp Power program highlights. Now, we may have a few folks here that are not familiar with Camp Power, so in a nutshell, Camp Power is a free summer wellness program implemented through the collaboration of multiple partnerships in the University Village complex in Dekalb. And the program serves youth ages 5 to 19 and is home where this complex is home to more than 600 children. And many of these, of course, are identified as food insecure. So the program recently completed its 5th summer. Can you believe that? 5 summers we've been doing this now. And the Kishwaukee Family YMCA serves in 2 key roles. It serves as the administrator of the program and serves as the fiscal agent for the program. And in order to provide this free program to the kids and to their families, $32,000 was raised this year from various individuals, organizations, and businesses in our local community. That's great, and a testament to this community. So a little backstory for you about one of our staff at Camp Power this summer. Tatiana Curtis was the camp director this past summer and brought so much to this program. Tatiana lived, you may not know this, in the University Village about 14 years ago. And she really understands what it's like to be living in this challenging situation. She was also involved in the YMCA in her youth. So when the camp director position opened, she knew it was her calling. She knows many of the people, of course, in the University Village, and that they succeeded in fulfilling life opportunities because of the opportunities that were made available to them in the village. And she's firmly committed to helping the current residents as they all share a common bond. So this summer, she took the time to get to know the families, connected easily, as you might imagine, with the University Village residents, and she was instrumental in making Camp Power a place where kids in this program are felt truly loved and that their lives were enhanced through the Camp Power program. So now for a few stats. So our camper enrollment. So last year we served 92 kids, or they were enrolled in the program. This year we had 105. And I think the biggest difference I want to point out is not just the number that were enrolled, but the ones that regularly attended. That would be 3 or more days a week. So this year we had 78 kids regularly attending the program, and that's up from 57 last year. That's a 27% increase, and we're very pleased with that. While we know some of that increase was due to the fact that last year they had a lot of renovations going on with the new ownership, you know, the numbers are back to their normal range. You go back to 2016, we had 108 kids enrolled. 2017, it dropped to 92, and this year we're back up to 105 kids. So we're just as pleased as punch to be able to serve that many kids in the village. One of the things I think Chief Lauer will attest to is that, again, we're seeing more crime decreasing as a result, hopefully, of this program. Last year we had 101 instances of reported crime, and this year we had 91. So that created a 10% decrease in the overall crime reports. Now that, if you add it to the years of 14 and 15 altogether, overall we've seen a 36% drop in the incidences of reported crime. So Camp Power is working, and thanks to the chief and others that have been involved in getting that program started. We have something called the Power Academy, and it's an academic portion of the program. And this year the Power Academy was moved to the end of the day rather than in the morning, as has been the case in previous years. So the result was the highest participation levels we ever seen. We had 71 kids involved in that program. That's beyond the normal camp day. It's just kind of an add-on enhancement to the program. And then the results are even more amazing. We do have pre and post tests, and of that we showed 81% of the kids that were in the Power Academy showed growth in reading. 50% showed growth in math. That's amazing. So to have this all happen at Camp Power, it's a partnership. Remember I mentioned that from the beginning. We have 7 key, what I call primary partners that are involved in this program, this collaboration. Of course, the WISE one. And then we have the City of DeKalb Police Department. We have NIU. We have VAC. We have Northwestern Medicine, the DeKalb Park District, and of course, University Village itself. And then we had a couple more organizations that helped us with programming opportunities for the kids in the village. We had the DeKalb Public Library. We had the DeKalb County Regional Office of Education, Adventure Works, and the DeKalb County Community Gardens. So after the program ends each year, we measure several different outcomes related to the program, and we're very happy to also extend our thanks to the university because they help us collate that data as well, and they're doing that right now to get those measurements on healthy living and effective climate results. So, bottom line, 2018 was a great year for Camp Power. We appreciate the city's support of this through the Human Service Funding Bucket, and we look forward to doing it in future years.
Thank you, Mark. Great program. Before you leave the podium, are there any questions or comments of Mark? Yes, Alderman Noriko.
I just want to say that I think it's truly impressive that this kind of collaborative effort has not only continued, but it has developed and grown. And I wish you and the Y and the partners many years of continued success.
Thank you,
Congratulations.
I think we would all second that. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jerry.
Moving right along, we have no mayoral appointments this evening. We move along now to public participation. We provide this opportunity for anybody who would like to speak to an item that is not listed on the agenda. Our city clerk, Fazekas, has given me a number of folks who would like to speak, but only one person would like to speak to something not on the agenda, and that's John Anderson. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Mayor. I'm a little concerned now that we've changed waste managers out of the picture, and we got a new contract with a new man, and they seem to be pretty good. I talked to a couple of the drivers, but with the dumpsters being absent now, I'm afraid that and we don't know what the city's going to do about leaves, that we can get ready for a lot of smoke. I've got neighbors who are continually burning, and the leaves aren't dry yet. They're trying to burn green stuff and whatever debris they got in the yard. And even after dark. I want to read you something I got here in 2008 from Bernanke, I think it was. Maybe it was. Anyway, it has to do with the fire regulations. Burning of leaves and garden debris. The burning of leaves and garden debris within the corporate limits of the city of DeKalb will be allowed with the following regulations. The burning of leaves and garden debris shall be kept a minimum of 25 feet from any building, house, garage, fence, or a lot line. That almost eliminates about a third of the lots in town. 25 feet away, there's a lot of lots that are 45 to 60 feet wide. They couldn't even light a match in there and be legal. Only small amounts are to be burned at one time and shall be supervised by at least one responsible adult at all times until the fire is out. A garden hose or other suitable firefighting equipment is required near the site for immediate use. Leaves and garden debris are prohibited from being burnt in the public right-of-way. And leaves and garden debris burning is prohibited after sunset. Open burning of leaves and garden debris that will be offensive or objectionable because of smoke or odor emissions odor emissions in the atmosphere, conditions of local circumstances, much like leaf or garden debris burning, hazardous or objectionable, shall be prohibited. In other words, if a neighbor complains about the neighbor's burning and the smell of the smoke, put it out. Well, I have called the fire department on one or two neighbors that I've got, one of them 3 different times. The fire's 10 feet from a wooden fence. They don't own a hose. They got a 5-gallon can of gasoline on the picnic table about 5 feet away from where they're at. But this ordinance doesn't list any consequences. And we got some real dinglings, mostly renters, that it's just continual. And you want to go out and sit on in your patio in your backyard, it's just offensive. Now,
John, you're beyond your 3-minute limit
okay,
now.
I'll wrap it up here. Anyway, there's no consequences for any of the violations, and I keep calling them back to the same place. I think it's time that we join the rest of the country. We can't smoke within 15 feet of a restaurant, but their smoke can come in my window while I'm eating at home. Now, don't tell me I should be eating out more, because I get plenty to eat. But anyway, I wish you'd consider changing the ordinance to a no-burn ordinance except for cooking your meals outside. And if you got a fireplace or what have you in the backyard, and stop this nuisance. And I just hope things don't get as smoky as I anticipate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. One of the things we try to do, I think, as a council and as a staff is to respond to folks like you who perhaps have an issue that we aren't discussing that evening. So believe me, your request has not fallen on deaf ears here, John.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Alderman Fanouken.
Could I recommend that we forward this issue to the Environmental Commission and have them do a workup on it for us?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The Environmental Commission has been very, very active in a number of things environmentally, and we'll make it a point to let Dan Kenny, who probably is either watching or will watch a recording of this meeting, to take some action regarding John's comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move along to Bessie, aren't you? I'm sorry, did I catch?
You missed me.
I caught you at
It's okay.
G1.
Yeah, but there's, on top of that, it says public.
Okay, very good.
I'm sorry.
This is for an item not on the agenda, right?
Correct,
Right,
correct.
okay. Sorry.
No, hey, not a problem.
You also want to speak to G1, though, don't you?
I do.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Mayor and council, first, you have inherited overwhelming challenges, and I think you are beginning to realize it is time to take seriously the commitment to turning the tide, or this community will not survive. And believe me, I feel for you. I totally understand. Budget, TIF, Hunter Properties, AGN, restructuring of management are at the top of the list. There's more. You no doubt will be taking some drastic measures, as you will need to rely, and you will need to rely heavily on the citizens who have lived in this community and have been involved in care about the welfare of the community. You cannot rely solely on the input of your staff. It is important to push for accountability and follow-up. Mayor and council, I'm not looking for a blame game, simply a probing honest look as to what is working and what is not, so that corrections and improvements can be made. My only course of action is to give you facts and to share such facts with as many people as possible. Today, 2 items real quickly, but the main thrust is accountability. And hopefully, within the next couple of weeks, we can work towards a resolve in these items. 1, I was taken aback a few weeks ago when the council was discussing Wi-Fi and the fact that the fiber optics was damaged. I managed to find out when that job was done. The city hired Thorn Electrical to install lights, etc., and the fiber optic cable. My questions are, why wasn't this made clear at the onset? I don't understand. Why hasn't there been anything done to seek out reasons for this fiber optic failure? It's beyond me. And has the fact that it has not been functioning been known? Where's the accountability? I think we talked a little bit about that at one point, Mayor. We've got to hold somebody accountable for this. 2, TIF. We're just at the start of following through. The JRB rightfully delayed action and demanded information, something that at least one alderman has been begging for years, and another alderman has actively been pushing for more information. Before a decision is made on another TIF, this is only the beginning, Council. I sent you an article about the village of University Park, Illinois, who seems to have a problem similar to ours regarding TIF in the budget. Apparently, councils have been given wrong advice, and this begs the question, what the blazes did the TIF attorneys and TIF consultants do all this time? Surely they've been compensated to advise the city. Should their services not have included advice on the proper propriety of our practices, or did they simply check off a few boxes to pretend we were following the proper TIF procedures and wait to be hired again and again and again? I have a funny feeling that calling the Attorney General may be one way to get to the bottom of this. University Park is calling for the FBI for help. We obviously are not alone in this. Let's call for some needed accountability. Thank you. You've got a tough job ahead of you.
Thank you, Bessie. Okay, we now move on to item number F on the agenda, and that is our consent agenda. As you know, all items listed on the consent agenda are enacted in one motion unless a member of the council requests that one be removed from the consent agenda.
Mayor?
Yes.
On F3, the resolution 2018-122, I'd ask for the with supplemental license for video gaming be stricken. There's no video gaming at that location, and that could be taken off. Otherwise,
So what you're asking for, Pat, is simply remove the
wordage with supplemental licensure for video gaming.
so that resolution then would read authorizing the reissuance of a restaurant liquor license for Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we amend that item on which we will vote on the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Jerry?
Yes, I'm sorry. David?
It was my understanding that the gaming license that's proposed was not related to video gaming. It was their amusement video gaming devices that they have on site, correct? Do they still have those?
I misunderstood your inquiry as not relating to the agenda. The video gaming that they have on site it doesn't require this video gaming license. This license, as referenced in the agenda packet, refers to video gaming under the state license process for gambling. So we are requesting the amendment.
So the reissuance of the restaurant liquor license will stand alone. There is no licensing required for the video gaming they have there.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. Dave, is that okay? Okay. A roll call then, please.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8 ayes.
Okay, now we do need a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and let me read the items on the consent agenda. Number 1, approval of city council minutes. A, minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of August 13, 2018. B, minutes of the regular city council meeting of August 13, 2018. C, minutes of the special committee of the whole meeting of August 21, 2018. Number 2, receive and file. A, accounts payable and payroll through September 10, 2018 in the amount of $1,714,443.53. And finally, and I'll read this slowly, Resolution 2018-122, authorizing the reissuance of a restaurant liquor license for Buffalo Wild Wings Incorporated, 2466 Sycamore Road. It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 aye.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Pat, on that. Okay, so move. Item G, now we move into items for separate action. Number 1, ordinance 2018-047, authorizing a zoning map amendment from the LC Light Commercial District to the PDC Planned Development Commercial District, and approval of a planned development plan for a Home 2 Suites by Hilton Hotels, Northern Illinois Hotels, LLC, on the southwest corner of Knowles Avenue South and South Annie Glidden Road. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. To speak to this item further is our principal planner, Dan Olson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We have in front of you from the applicant, Northern Illinois Hotels, LLC, is a request for a 4-story, 90-room hotel called Home 2 Suites by Hilton for the subject site. You see the aerial there on the monitor, southwest corner of South Annie Glynn Road and Knowles Avenue South, requesting rezoning from the light commercial district to the planned development commercial district. Also approval of planned development plans. Also approval of 2 waivers, one for the building height and the other is for improvements in the 50-foot buffer area next to a residential zone property. The city's comprehensive plan indicates the subject site for commercial uses. Home 2 Suites is a extended stay hotel. The facility will include a conference room and indoor pool. The applicant conducted a market feasibility study which indicated there's an identified need for a mid to higher tier extended stay hotel in the Dekalb. Room rates will go from about $130 to $180 per night. Estimated property taxes will be generated from the site are estimated just over $200,000 per year. In addition, proposed hotel motel taxes roughly about $140,000 to $150,000 per year. A hotel is a special use in the light commercial district. However, the plan development process offers the city more control over the project and its future development. Example, the site layout or the architectural control. In addition, restrictions on the such things as the maximum length of stay at the hotel can be regulated through the plan development process procedure. In the light commercial district, there are several permitted uses that could locate on the property without any zoning approval required. The list of the LC permitted uses and the special uses were provided in your packet just for your reference. The site is also in the South Annie Glynn Road Corridor Overlay Zoning District, which has some guidelines for development, which are also provided in your packet, and the project has to comply with. The project was discussed at a neighborhood open house on June 27th, and at a Ward 6 meeting on July 14th, both hosted by 6th Ward Alderman Verbic. The meetings are allowed residents to take a look at the plans, ask questions, meet with the developer, staff, and look at the plans. Also, all the attendees were advised of the upcoming Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing, and we're encouraged to attend that. This is the layout plan for the site. As you can see, there's access off Knowles Avenue South. With parking around, there's parking for 98 spaces. 98 parking spaces are required. There's 98 spaces on site. The detention area is to the east of the site. There's also a floodplain area in that area, so the hotel's location is appropriate based on the configuration of the lot and the meeting all the setback requirements. And I'll go over in a few of these regarding the a few of the waivers. The original plan submittal indicated there's a 50-foot buffer area required in unplanned developments when the commercial property is next to residential. There's residential to the directly to the west there, going back to the aerial of the site, directly left or west of the hotel site there is a single-family residential, the Knowles Subdivision. So there's a 50-foot buffer area required there. Initial plans had about 9 parking spaces in that 50-foot buffer area, dumpster, trash enclosure dumpster area. The parking lot was about 15.5 feet away. The building is set back 80-plus feet, plenty far away from the buffer area. Staff recommended that the applicant take a look at moving improvements 50 feet to the east to comply with that. There's limitations, obviously, on the detention area and the floodplain. In order to move that to the east was not possible, so what they did was did remove some parking spaces. Take a look on the left or the west side there. They did move 8 parking spaces, so there's 2 spaces, only 2 spaces in the 50-foot setback here in the southwest side. The trash dumpster was moved about 60 feet to the east. There's 2 parking spaces on the northwest side, but they're beyond the 50-foot buffer area. We also recommended they add additional landscape plantings in that area, which they did. Additional evergreen trees are added beyond what's required in the UDO. They also, there was a 6-foot high solid fence in that area required. They increased that height of that fence 2 feet. It's also a solid fence. The trash enclosure was moved 60 feet east and will be enclosed with materials similar to the building. Also, some proposed changes. The landscape islands at Knowles Avenue. You can see there that that's where the proposed access for the future is to be. They're going to remove the landscaping out of those islands. They're very tall and high and block visibility. They're going to remove all those and put in low growth plantings in there. They also have added a left turn lane in that island as you go west to accommodate a car or two in that area to turn into the site safely. The South Andy Glen Road corridor standards, there's a maximum floor area ratio of 0.40. They're proposing a floor area ratio of 0.47. The standards do allow an increase of 0.10 in the FAR if they meet 6 or more performance criteria as listed in the UDO, which they did provide, ensuring they're meeting. The maximum height of the building is 45 feet. They're requesting a waiver of about 8 or 9 feet. The corridor standards do allow an increase of 10 feet in the maximum height. Again, that height's only going to be for the parapet to screen some rooftop equipment. It's not the entire height of the building. We did work with the applicant on there. There's a landscape rendering showing the landscaping that will be on the site. One of the additional things, too, on the east side around the detention area, the Park District, which owns property to the south, requested that the area around the detention pond be planted with native plantings, which they did revise the plan and show that. The architectural renderings, we did work with the applicant on, and the elevations, the commission did recommend a slight change with more earth tone colors. See the renderings here from each of the sides of the building. From the west, as you view from the west, and view from the south. From the east, this would be the view from Andy Glidden Road, and from the north, this is the view from Knowles Avenue south. The more earth tone, probably the best is to show another building that's in Schaumburg. It would be very similar in terms of the colors and materials of the building that is proposed here. So they do comply. What we did for the Hampton Inn, there's some architectural standards that were approved for that hotel. We recommended those standards, which had a minimum amount of masonry and stone that could be on the building, a maximum amount of EFIS or drive it. So what we're doing is taking those standards and applying them to the proposed Home 2 Suites hotel. They did provide to showing a couple other hotels in terms of what the interior would look like in terms of the rooms, the swimming pool area, and the lobby area. The Park District did review the plans and commented on the need to provide more native plantings, which they did provide around the detention area. Also, they do recommend it or suggest they do get access across the property now from the current owner to access their property to the south, which they do own the creek between the Hampton Inn and the proposed hotel. They requested that they be allowed or have the rights to access across a hotel site for maintenance purposes to get their vehicles across there so they can maintain that area they do own, and the owner agreed to that, and that's accommodated in the development agreement. A traffic count or traffic analysis was conducted by the applicant and reviewed by the city engineer. The study was conducted in March of 2018. In summary, there was a traffic signal warrant analysis conducted for the intersection of South Annie Glen Road and Knowles Avenue South, which did show that a traffic signal is not warranted with the existing traffic volumes and projected traffic volumes with the proposed hotel. Also, the capacity analysis in the study showed that all the critical movements at South Annie Glen Road and Knowles Avenue South intersection are projected to operate at a good level of service under the existing stop sign control. Also, that no other improvements are required along Knowles Avenue South except for the changes to the landscape and improve visibility and to add the turn lane in the island. Also, in the South Annie Glen Road corridor standards, there was a policy regarding road separation on Annie Glen Road of 660 feet, that there be no new access points along there. Has to meet that minimum separation requirement. So the distance between Knowles Avenue South and the entrance to Hampton Inn is about 700 feet. So there's no room for direct access from Annie Glen to this subject site. It would not be safe, it would cause conflicts, and is not in line with the policies of the corridor standards. Providing connection from the Hampton Inn to the proposed site is not feasible. They'd be crossing a bike path, a creek, some floodplains, and the Park District would likely not approve of that. The Hampton Inn site was not laid out for a connection as such. We did receive accident data from 2013 to 2017 for that intersection of Knowles Avenue and South Annie Glen from the police department. After their review, they indicated that based on the low number of accidents at that intersection, they do not feel there's a safety issue with the intersection. We also contacted the school district regarding the bus schedule, compared that with the traffic counts that were done back in February with the traffic study to match those up. And the wait times for the buses were between 15, or for the traffic, between 15 and 6 seconds, turning left out of the Knowles Avenue South onto Annie Glen Road. The traffic study also showed one left turn in the afternoon, a wait time of 5 seconds. We also contacted the transportation company for the district, and they indicated there were very few complaints from their bus drivers regarding the intersections. There will be times when the waits can be long there, particularly with events from NIU, but that's no different than any other intersection in the city where there's a lot of traffic. But the important thing is we don't base the traffic improvements on those individual type occurrences. So the city engineers reviewed the traffic study, and all the improvements, the traffic is approved. There's no warrant for a signal at that intersection, and they approve of the plans. Turning out of the site, there will be a no left turn sign as one exits a hotel site to make sure that nobody does turn left through the subdivision. They'll be striped that way, the lane out. Will also be right turn only striping on the outbound from the hotel will also be on there. In terms of public safety, calls for police service to the Hampton Inn from March 2015 to July 2018 were gathered. Chief Lowry indicated there's little demand for service regarding the Hampton Inn that is criminal in nature. With a planned development, we can, and we did have in this development agreement that's in front of you, a no trespass and traffic enforcement agreement with the owner, and require common area surveillance is required. We've done that in other planned developments, Cornerstone, Pizza Hut, Plaza Dekalb. Property values, the applicant did provide data regarding that. You see the ground signs here proposed for the hotel and the proposed location, how that will look as at the entrance. This is the Hampton Inn, current view of that. The applicant did provide information from RVG Commercial indicating that the home values have increased since in the neighborhood since the construction of the Hampton Inn.
The plan development agreement, I did hand that out to you. We had a couple changes since the posting of the agenda last week. And we pretty much have standard language through there that we have for most plan developments. I'll just go through a few here to summarize. In the page 3 on the permitted uses, language is in here regarding that the property shall be maintained as a hotel, and all the occupants shall remain eligible for treatment as hotel guests pursuant to city code and state law, which means that no person shall become a permanent resident and cannot stay more than 30 days. Also, that the hotel, approve only a hotel for use for a period shorter than 30 days, and that any other use, including other forms of residential use, apartment use, residential rental property, long-term hotel use, longer, or hotel stays longer than 30 days, or any other use whatsoever, whether residential, commercial, or otherwise, is expressly prohibited. On page 5, the ground signs, we do have dates for those now, which I just showed you, so those will be included in that. On page 7, we did one of the recommendations from the commission that came forward was the replacement of the existing Knowles subdivision entrance sign at Knowles Avenue South. The owners agreed to replace that, or if not, agreement with the city and them in terms of the design, that they would provide the city $1,500 and we would put a new sign in there. I think it's the original sign at the entrance. Also, backup SSA, which we do require in all projects, that's provided here. Page 10 on site control. There is extensive language regarding the maintenance of the property, how it shall be maintained. Requirement that they provide a site control escrow of $3,000 to ensure that they maintain the streets in terms of any mud within 1,000 feet of the site. They have to clean any roads during construction, clean up debris, mow the yard, no high weeds, etc. So they would have 48 hours to comply if any of those issues. If they don't, the city would do the work and withdraw the money from the escrow. Also, prior to construction, we would require, which we do in all projects, a pre-construction meeting between the city and the applicant. They had to provide a full construction plan indicating the layout of the site, where the trailers would be, and any stockpiling areas, all this with the sensitivity to the adjacent residential areas to make sure that it's done appropriately and there's no impact on the surrounding residential areas. Also, it allows phasing of the construction, so berming and landscaping is put in before construction on the building starts. So I got a fly all over me here. Also require on page 16 common area surveillance with cameras on the site with a connection to the city police department, so those can be viewed live for monitoring. So those are some of the highlights. The other changes that the applicant was looking at, we agreed to those. Friday, they're very minimal regarding fees, et cetera, and we're cleaned up and are agreeable to the owner. The initial public hearing in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission was held on July 18th and was continued to August 8th. At the conclusion of the August 8th hearing, the commission recommended approval by the vote of 3-2. We had 2 members absent. Commissioners Castro, Maxwell, and Buckley voted yes. Commissioner Barbie and Chair Doe voted no. Recommended approval of the rezoning, the plan development plans, and subject to the development standards and conditions that are noted in the staff report. Those included that the approval of a 4-story hotel, 90 rooms, plan development plans per the exhibit. The architectural guidelines approved as Hampton Inn would be approved for this site. No length of stay more than 30 days. A no trespass traffic enforcement agreement with the owner should be approved. Waivers regarding building heights and improvements in the 50-foot buffer area. Language be added denoting that the facility cannot be used for anything other than an extended stay hotel. No other apartment usage or other residential development. All staff comments being addressed, which I have. Elevations being changed for more earth tone colors, which I did provide. Payment for the new subdivision entrance sign
and make sure the DeKalb Park District is allowed access to their property, which they've agreed to in the development agreement. The two commissioners voting in favor of the petition believe the applicant met the findings of fact for rezoning and plan development, which are spelled out in the draft ordinance in front of you. And many of the reasons are kind of what I just mentioned regarding the project. The two members voting no, Commissioner Barbie noted she felt the hotel was in the wrong location. Chair Doe stated the proposed hotel location may not be the best. At the public hearing on July 18th, we had citizen response forms from Linda and Preston Chrysler of 122 Mason Street, and Dennis Smilgelski, Janice Gorham, and Nicole Gorham of 122 Knowles Avenue South were added to the record. Both of those indicated they do not support the proposal. We had emails also from Cindy and Cal Zune of 652 Plum Street, and Steve Brown of 1231 Mason Street also received, noting their opposition. So we had a total of 6 residents speak at the July 18th hearing, mention their concerns with the proposal, including traffic impacts, stormwater drainage, floodplain, public safety, damage during construction, reduction in property values, and the appropriateness of the site for a hotel. We also did receive a letter of support from the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce and John Laskowski, a resident. At the second hearing on August 8th, we did receive additional emails from Patty Pumphrey, 599 Persimmon Street, and Jeff Norris, 713 Plum, Candy Flood of 1311 Mason, and Steve Knopfsinger of 126 Ivy Street, all received, noting their opposition of the request. We had a total of 9 residents speak. 3 of those did speak at the July 18th hearing also, spoke against the project, citing similar concerns mentioned at the initial hearing. Since the August 8th hearing, we did receive a letter of support from the DeKalb County Convention and Visitors Bureau for the hotel. All the reports and letters and emails are in your packets. Also included the minutes from the commission meetings of July 8th and August 8th. Those have been approved by the commission. So you do have the revised development agreement in front of you. Staff recommends approval of the ordinances as prepared. So we'd recommend that motion that they approve the development agreement in front of you. The applicant is here, Pramit Patel, along with a few others from his team. Certainly could answer any questions that you may have. There was no letter for waiver or second reading. The commission's recommendation was not unanimous, but if council would lead that way, I think the applicant is requesting waiver or second reading. That's entirely up to the city council, though.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. It's been moved and seconded that we approve this plan development plan. Prior to council discussion on this, I would like to entertain a few folks who would like to speak to this issue, which gives us a better understanding and a better feel for what folks tonight are thinking. The first speaker is Dawn Flippen. And we would kindly ask Dawn and others to try to stay within that 3-minute limit. Thank you.
My name's Dawn Flippen. I live at 601 Larson, which is about a block back from this proposal. And I spoke at both of the planning and zonings to voice my disapproval of this. While the location of it is not up against my property and I'm not going to see some of the effects, that is my primary entrance and exit. So I will be affected there. My children will be affected. Their buses are going to be affected regardless of what the traffic study says. And I think one of the things that I heard tonight, that if this is being fit in there in such a way that you can't even scoot it to keep that 50-foot buffer that you're supposed to keep because of that floodplain, is this truly where this belongs? If we've already established that that is wetland and floodplain, and now you want to pave over a large portion of it, where do you think all of that is going to go? And so while I commend this group for saying that if they build this, they're going to put in energy efficient light bulbs and all of that fun stuff, but the damage has already been done because you've paved over this huge green space. And while I understand that this was for sale when I bought my home, at no point would I have ever considered a 4-story building. A one-level strip mall, maybe a nice bakery, a coffee shop, that would be awesome. But a 4-story hotel directly across the street from the park that's going to increase traffic. And the thing is that this photo is completely, like, years outdated because the park is not there anymore. The park is much closer to the pond and the street now. It is literally across the street from the park. And so you're increasing traffic and there's kids there. And that's where the ice cream man stops. So there's kids running across there all the time. And I guess I just need to make my voice heard that this is not what I bought my home to be near. This was not something that I would have pictured. And to be quite honest with you, if I were back, if this had been there when I was looking at homes, I would not have bought my house because that would have been a deal breaker for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Desiring to speak to this item next is Jan Gorham. With Bessie Chronopoulos on deck.
Hi, I'm Jan Gorham, 1220 Knowles South, the house right next to it. I wanted to start out by saying my husband and me, 20 years ago, they had that little ranch built, and now we're retired, and I guess we're going to have to move if this is approved. But I do want you to know the other hotel, I didn't oppose it. I didn't go to the meetings to oppose it. It seemed like that other hotel by the Resource Bank belonged there. It had its own entrance. It faces the road. And it's not really noisy to us living right there, you know. But this is going to be like noise, and it's never going to end. My neighbor across the street on Mason and Knowles, that parking lot, the front parking lot of the hotel, when they pull in, she's going to get headlights right in her windows every day for the rest of her life. This is like, if you put it into thirds, that lot is just a bad lot for such a massive, big brown building. The first third, you can't even build there because of the water and all that. So it's got to get shoved further into a subdivision. I don't know of any hotels that live right next to a house. It just doesn't seem right. So, and as for some other people that didn't come, I guess they feel like, what's the point? Doesn't mean that they're for it. They're totally against it, but I don't know why they don't come or do the emails. So I just would really like you to not approve it.
Thank you, Jan.
Okay.
Bessie Chronopoulos.
This brings back a lot of memories. First of all, kudos to Alderman Verbeek for facilitating meetings to inform your constituency. You did exactly what you should do as an alderman, and kudos to the people who came and spoke at both the public hearings at the Plan Commission. As far as I'm concerned, in all my time in working in government, that's one of the best presentations I've heard from citizens. You really did exactly what you were supposed to do. Fantastic. Keeping people in DeKalb. That's kind of what we all have wanted to do, isn't it? Keeping people in DeKalb. This proposal, no gas station and no hotel are allowed as it is currently zoned. You have to obtain a special use permit. The traffic study seemed to be based on 1 day's experience with data primarily from staff and the developer. That is not a true traffic study. The residents got it. They explained how the traffic study wasn't as thorough as it should have been. People moved here because they did their homework and wanted to settle in DeKalb, in this little section of DeKalb, because it was zoned as is. That's what annexation agreements are all about. to set a standard and to protect the investment of owners. Yep, they invest too. Of owners, they offer protection to those who have invested in our community. What DeKalb needs is more single-family homes being occupied. This provides stability to the city. People live here, pay taxes here, send their kids to school, they get involved. This facility is not needed in our city at this time, especially not in this location. It'll diminish the value of the subdivision, and council will be turning their backs, yes, turning their backs on the people they should be protecting. The thinking on the part of the city is short-sighted. The profound lack of neutrality on the part of the staff concerns me. We want to think what we think of as new, something to add to our list of achievements, like video gaming facilities, gambling facilities, more multiple housing, which we need like a hole in the head, and go full force for something is better than nothing attitude, and that has got to stop. Quality, high standards, sustainability, retention of existing businesses and residences. Other locations should be considered so as to improve the existing area with this new development. Perhaps we can get creative as to what other areas the city would benefit from this development instead of invading the current landowners who have invested their money in DeKalb, existing residents. And something that our planner said kind of posed another question for me, that this facility can only be used as this facility. What happens if it doesn't flourish in that use? Is there somebody that's going to come back in and ask for yet another revision, another special use? And again, I would urge the council to start breaking the habit of waiving second readings. This is a good one to do it with. Maybe each and every council member should take a drive around, maybe knock on a couple of those doors and talk to these people. You're pushing them out of their homes. That's wrong. That's wrong. You are here to protect the people who live here.
Thank you, Bessie. George Jarris.
Hello, I'm George Jarris from 1221 Ivy. I don't live directly next to the proposed hotel site, but I do live across the park from it, so I would see it every day. And so I've got a number of concerns about the hotel. Some of those would be concerns about anything that would be there, like the paving, the area and stuff. Those would be concerns whether it was a regular business that was put in there or the hotel. But my main concern about putting a hotel there, aside from the other concerns that have already been raised about it just not feeling right in a residential neighborhood, are the park, the playground that's directly across the street from it. I know I send my kids to that playground to play. I know lots of my neighbors do send their kids to the playground to play. People come from other areas of the city to let their kids play in that playground. And increasing the traffic on that street is a concern when the kids are running around right there. And another concern is who's going to be staying in that hotel. We don't know who's going to be staying in that hotel for a week or 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. We have, unfortunately, we live in a society where as a Cub Master of a Cub Scout pack, I have to take youth protection training. As a Sunday school teacher, I have to take youth protection training. We're taught all the time to look out for the bad people that are in this world. And with a park, a playground across the street, I'm concerned about my kids' safety with a transient population living directly across the street. There's no way to know exactly who's going to be there, who's going to be watching my kids out their window, who's going to be pulling their car up to that playground and calling to them. It's a major concern of mine, and I don't know if it's been addressed from the perspective of a parent and somebody that leads youth in the community. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, George. There be no other citizens wanting to speak to this. And unless, Dan, you have anything that you want to add, I'd like to turn it now over for council for further comment and discussion. We do have a motion on the floor with a second.
Just a couple of quick things, Mayor. The
Sure.
stormwater plan and engineering plans were submitted, reviewed by our city engineer, and they have approved those, looking
Okay.
at our city code, municipal code. Also, we did get a letter from the Park District indicating they have no concerns with the hotel proximity to the park.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Alderman Noriko.
I have a question regarding the traffic study. Whether it, and I apologize, I did look at it, I should have looked at it more carefully, but to what extent it was done over several days, it seems like that's some concern about it, that it may not have reflected a range of traffic counts.
And the applicant probably respond, their engineer or our engineer. The traffic count was taken on Thursday, February 15th, the school day. And this traffic study was done and by consultant, reviewed by our city engineer, done per all city standards, IDOT standards for traffic studies.
Okay.
So I don't know how common it is to do a traffic study over several days unless there's some
okay.
warrant, but it was done over one day in a school day on Thursday, February 15th.
Okay, and you said that it also met IDOT standards,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Does our city engineer like to respond, or engineer for the applicant to that? Follow up?
Sorry, the gentleman for the traffic study's not here.
Okay.
Okay.
But our city
That
engineers
does-
can answer any questions, but it was done for one day.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Alderman Verbeek.
Well, Dan, exceptional work through and through this whole process. It's very appreciated not only by me, but certainly the property owners and residents in the 6th Ward, who I do appreciate. Thank you very much for showing up, speaking out, and letting me know how I can best serve you. It was quite unanimous across property owners, residents, the business community, that this is not acceptable. My reason that I vote no is that all of these property owners bought their homes knowing that that property was zoned light commercial. One of the uses of light commercial is not this property, nor is it a gas station. So again, it's very unfair to the property owners to change the plan after they've already invested.
Thank you, Mike. Alderman Favor.
So I think you addressed this, but the majority of people that I've spoken to, their concern is in terms of the, should the hotel go bankrupt or whatever, that this does not turn into, apartment building or something like that, and that has been addressed. I believe you covered that, correct?
Yes, and under the permitted uses, it entirely restricts it just to a hotel, no other type of residential use in the future. So it's on page 3 of the agreement.
Does that answer your question?
It does, yep.
Tony. Any other comments? Alderman Noriko.
I've heard several comments that this is not the best site for a hotel, and I agree with that. But I question whether we are being asked to select the best site. It appears that many of the objections have been addressed over the weeks, the city working with the developer and so forth. I would have been happier with a hotel that was, say, 3 stories. It does seem somewhat large for the site, but I'm also aware of the fact that if developed and if successful, and I have no reason to think that it wouldn't be, that it would bring in much needed revenue to the city. And we desperately need that revenue. And I think it would also connect with NIU and NIU activities that would be helpful.
Thank you. Alderman Verbeek.
Yeah, and I don't want to not thank the developer for being responsive to a number of the issues presented by certainly property owners and residents, but keep in mind in the 6th Ward, we're already saddled with a vacant hotel. It's been years. There's never been a for sale sign on it. The sign, a travel-in sign, has never been covered. So we have a little bad taste in our mouth in the 6th Ward with regard to the points that have been made, what happens to this in the future. So I think, I hope the council really considers that as well.
Alderman Jacobson.
I think my concern relates back to Alderman Verbeek's, looking at other hotels in our market, whether it's the existing Travel Inn, whether it's some of the other hotels in that general vicinity, whether it's further eastward on Lincoln Highway that we've had issues with, whether it was some of the downtown properties that were hotels 30, 40, 50 years ago that aren't in existence now. I think that's one of the challenges in hotel properties, that once they come from a Highline hotel in 10 or 15 or 20 years, and then they go down to the value branded hotels because, again, either they've outlived some of their relevancy or they become functionally obsolescent over that 25 or 30 year period, there becomes challenges of what you do with that property. I mean, they're purpose-built properties. And again, looking at how close this is, I didn't realize until really seeing the pictures tonight how close it is to some of these people's houses. I lived in the Knowles, and again, I appreciate when I bought my house, I was on a cornfield and loved it, and eventually it became developed. But it was developed with a very like-kind use as far as I was concerned in terms of other residential housing. And the world changes, the market changes. My fear is, what do you do in 30 or 40 years when you have a hotel that, again, is functionally obsolescent in a neighborhood? I mean, talk about a major blighting influence to that neighborhood. And that, I think, is going to be part of the discussion going forward with some of the other projects that are up in front of us. There are some really good development sites in the city of DeKalb for a hotel right now, and I appreciate those sites for what they are. There's also would be some great common public good to remediate the blight in some of those former hotel sites. So again, I appreciate the developer coming to the table. I appreciate the product. I've stayed in a home too. Again, I don't worry now what the issue is going to be with that hotel. I think most of those questions and concerns for me have been alleviated. I don't worry about the type of person staying in a $200 a night hotel. I mean, it's a different clientele than we currently are really going after right now. It's a niche market hotel that's a 90-bedroom hotel. My question and my fear is what happens 20 or 30 years from now when these neighbors are still expected to live in a neighborhood and they have a giant eyesore burned out building passing them as they come in and out of work every day.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
The issue that Kate, Alderman Noriko brought up about the different sites, that was brought up too at the commission, and we discussed with the commission to try and focus on, the request is for this site, not other sites. So looking at, the focus was the findings of fact for this property. Does it meet the findings of fact for rezoning and plan development for this site? And the vote was 3-2 that they felt that it should be approved based on the findings of fact. I know the applicant did look at other sites, and they did a presentation or testimony at the hearing regarding some of those other sites and why they chose this one. I don't know if the applicant wants to address that.
Good evening. One of the things is, you know, when we pick a site, we have to have approval from either Hilton or Marriott who are choosing. And we did look at every site in DeKalb, and this was the only one that Hilton said yes to. So the other ones are either too small or they're too far away from the highway exit, so they weren't approved. And usually when Hilton, they do their due diligence, this is their business, so when they approve a site like this, they know that it'll be successful at that location.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Alderman Fanouken.
Thank you, Mayor. Dan, a couple of questions, Similar to our conversation a couple of weeks ago about the video gaming, does this site meet all the state and local requirements if we were to pass this change? I mean, it meets all the criteria is, I guess, the question I'm asking.
Yeah, the commission felt it meets all the criteria in our UDO for rezoning and for plan development.
Okay.
And they're stated in the ordinance.
And again, if I recall correctly, this property's been zoned commercially since that subdivision was built 20-some years ago, if I recall correctly.
Correct, in 1996 when the subdivision was recorded.
Thank you.
Light commercial.
Any further discussion? Mike? Alderman Marquardt.
So, I am frustrated to a certain extent. Because the product being proposed is a quality product and not one that's, for lack of a better term, the hotel on East Lincoln Highway, whatever it's called, Dekalb Motel. So it's not like that type of a product. And to be quite honest, I feel like whatever would be proposed for that site would have the same list of complaints against it as far as traffic, as far as this, as far as all those. So even if it was a light commercial, I believe that you would still have the same complaints because your idea of traffic would actually increase with a strip mall because you would have people coming in and out constantly, as opposed to a extended stay hotel. So the traffic warrant there doesn't follow with me. When I look at the cases about the youth, and I agree with that, because I am in a similar situation in my personal life. But that's any place in the world, to be quite honest, that you have to look out for that. So just by having that hotel there does not alleviate that concern. I have that concern in my neighborhood. I watch out for all the kids in my neighborhood, just like everybody else in my neighborhood watches out for them. My main frustration often comes, and I'm sorry, Bessie, it's going to come at you, is the constant not do a thing. We have to talk about everything until it is talked to death. And nothing gets accomplished. And I'm tired of that. There's a frustration that goes back many years to talking everything to death. And it put us back. And it's frustrating beyond belief.
Thank you, Mike. Any further comments? It's been moved and seconded that we approve this zoning map amendment and the approval of the plan development plan for the Home 2 Suites Hotel. Roll call.
Verbic,
No.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
No.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
6 ayes.
Thank you. It has been suggested that we entertain any motion for waiver of second reading on this. Is anyone predisposed to do that?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we waive second reading on this ordinance. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Jacobson,
No.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
No.
Smith.
Yes.
I got Tony.
Sorry. Favor,
No.
Does not pass.
5 aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Jerry, it does not
Has to be
require a
I beg your pardon?
supermajority, so
Oh,
we'll be
the
back in 2
supermajority,
weeks.
so it needed the 5.
No, it
Okay,
needed 6.
it needed 6.
So
So
it'll have to come
we
back
did
in
not
2
waive
weeks.
second reading, so this will come back for second reading at our next council meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Sorry. Corrected again. Okay, item number 2, ordinance 2018-048, amending Chapter 38, intoxicating liquors, Section 38.09, restrictions generally applicable. This is first reading. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Speaking to this item is our city attorney, Dean Frieders.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm here to lighten our mood tonight and talk about alcohol a little bit. On West Lincoln Highway on the north side of the road, you may be familiar with what is currently a vacant lot that's utilized by Fatty's as overflow parking. That lot is owned by Jeff Doby, who's here tonight. Jeff came to the city and has talked about different potential uses for that site and wants to come up with a use that'll be beneficial to the community and commercially viable. And that takes advantage of the site's unique location and some of the attributes of it. One of the ideas that he had was coming forward and building a multi-unit commercial center in there that would accommodate different commercial uses within it. One of the proposed uses, I'm going to kind of give you an overview and then I'll get to this specific ordinance. One of the proposed uses would be a liquor store. One of the proposed uses would be what we would call a video gaming establishment, so a bar liquor license with video gaming. As he started to approach this site and look at it and look at its configuration and look at ways of optimizing its effective use, he had the idea of developing it with a drive-through. And so Jeff's approach to that issue was to come and meet with city staff and meet with the community development department, the police department, the fire department, understand what kind of concerns there could be that relate to that. As our city code is currently comprised, it prohibits any liquor establishment from having drive-through liquor sales. And I think when we initially heard about the concept of drive-through liquor sales, there was some reluctance or concern about the prospect for that. As we undertook investigations of it, as we looked at the proposal Mr. Doby was making, we became more comfortable with it to the point that this has a positive staff recommendation. We have drive-through liquor sales in Sycamore. We have reached out to other communities that permit this and haven't found adverse stories coming out of it. In particular, when coupled with the kind of restrictions that were proposed initially by Mr. Doby, we have a higher degree of confidence with the idea. So tonight we have 3 separate items. I should note, even if these are approved, the use that he's proposing would require some further zoning approval, so it would come back at a later date. What he's seeking to do is see if this business model would be permitted and if the licenses would be available. And if they are, then this would come back for zoning approvals at a later date. The first item that's before you would be a change to our liquor code, specifically section 38.09. 38.09 is kind of our catch-all for liquor-related regulations that apply across the board to all licensees. The proposal that is included in here, right now as it's written, it says you can't have a drive-through. The proposal is to permit drive-throughs under very narrow circumstances. So you must apply for it at the outset when you come in for your initial license. If you come back at a later point in time and say, hey, I want to get a drive-through, you start your whole liquor license application process over. So it's not simply a supplemental license that gets tacked on. It requires review of the entire premises, the entire license application. They would only be available for establishments that are pure packaged liquor stores. So we have some establishments that are a bar that also engage in package sales, for example. We have establishments that are grocery stores or other forms of retail that have alcohol sales. This would only be permitted for pure packaged liquor sales. Subsection 3 lists a number of conditions that would be required with regard to security. So at minimum, a security camera system with a recorder capable of retaining at least 7 days of video, with high-definition cameras showing window transactions inside the store, showing the vehicle in the drive-thru, the driver of the vehicle, the passengers or other occupants of the car, the front and rear of the car, and the entrance and common areas of the facility. Those were proposals that came from the applicant, came from Mr. Doby as he was looking at how to configure this in a way that would lead itself to be responsibly managed. Adequate site lighting, cooperation and collaboration with the police department on crime prevention through environmental design, a monitored alarm equipped with an alert button, a drive-through window and enclosure that is equipped with bullet-resistant glass, a system for notifying employees when there's a car in the queue, when there are cars in the drive-through, a system for verifying the legitimacy of ID that's handed in, so they wouldn't just be looking at it and checking the date. They would have a system to verify that the ID is actually valid, and other measures as recommended by the Chief of Police or Community Development Director. This would only be for sale of packaged liquors in their original container, not for consumption on the premises. They would be required to have a common area patrol agreement with the police department. We currently maintain one of those with almost all of our liquor licensees in the city. They'd be prohibited in areas that pose unique traffic or safety concerns. There are some setbacks that are ascribed to this, and as we looked at the kind of uses that you'd want to regulate the distance from, we tried to establish what reasonable setbacks were from those. And because at this point in time we're looking at just one license, we tried to optimize those distances to maximize them, to maximize the setbacks to the greatest extent possible. If drive-thrus are something that other businesses become interested in, and those setbacks are something that council wishes to adjust with future licensees, we would recommend looking at that at future points in time. The city would have the ability to include any other supplemental restrictions or special hour limitations or limitations on what could be sold. The police department would have the ability to require suspension of the drive-through operations separate from the rest of the business. And one of the unique components of this would be making it clear that you can't just open a drive-through liquor store. If it's going to be a packaged liquor store with a drive-through, it will be a packaged liquor store that is open to the public or open to persons of age, and you can have a drive-through as a supplemental part of that business. Again, this first component just changes the city code to enable the rest of the considerations Mr. Doby has brought forward. If the first component isn't approved, then we would take a step back to the drawing board and look at the other businesses that have been proposed. I'm happy to address questions on this initially, and then depending on the outcome from this, questions on the other two items. I would note again, Mr. Doby is here tonight, and this does have a positive staff recommendation.
Are you suggesting, Dean, that if the ordinance before us, where we have a motion on the floor in a second, that if that does not pass, items 3 and items 4 are somewhat moot?
Well, if this ordinance doesn't pass, then the request for the liquor license with supplemental licensure for drive-through, at the very least, we would have to change our approach to that. But I'm not sure if this part of it didn't pass, if the rest of the enterprise is something that Mr. Doby would want to go forward with or not.
I see what you mean. Okay. We do have a motion on this floor, do we not? Okay. Now, Alderman Fanouken.
You know, I know that Jeff's current business does a very good job policing identification, all that, but what, I don't want to call them extraordinary steps, so what steps beyond, you know, IDing the driver will be, like if somebody 21 comes up with, you know, 4 or 5 other teenagers in the car, what kind of concerns will we have there?
As we looked at this, so the primary concern is identifying the driver, having good footage of the passengers or whoever may be in the car, and the way their system is proposed to be configured, we would have that. and confirming that the identification that's being provided is valid. And it wouldn't just be looking at the ID. They'd have a system in place for actually verifying it's a valid ID. When you get into the other passengers in the car and verifying their names or identities, we started looking at that, and we started looking at comparison communities and looking at communities that have drive-throughs, and we weren't able to identify any communities that had gone to those kind of measures. Separately, it was pointed out to us from a practical perspective, and if you go to the liquor store on North Annie Glidden on late nights, you'll see there may be times when a car comes into the parking lot and one occupant of the car gets out of the car and goes inside and buys some alcohol and comes back in the car and gets in. We don't have a process for verifying the age or identity of other persons who may be in a car when someone goes to a liquor store. Focusing on ensuring that the driver is legal to engage in that activity, that transaction, and that we have, in this case, we would have far more information about other occupants of the car and the vehicle that they're coming in than we would in any other normal retail purchase.
I just follow up, if I may then. So, but what you're saying is that the driver has to be the purchaser, it cannot be somebody else in the car.
That's a question I hadn't specifically contemplated. I don't know if Mr. Doby has a response on that. I think. Yes, if you want to step up, Jeff?
Thank you for looking this over. But yes, I would insist that the driver was of age, and if somebody in the car was the actual purchaser and the driver was not of age, then they could park the vehicle and act like a normal liquor store, and the person of age would walk in then and show his ID.
Yeah, I'm more comfortable with that concept that way.
Yeah,
thank you.
I understand also, want to run it as clean as possible. We also have license plate capture, so that also verify who the driver is that way also, and if anything happens in the future.
All right, thank you.
Any further comments on this request? If not, roll call.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
No.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
7 aye.
Motion passes.
We are requesting, if the council is so inclined, a waiver of second reading to permit the council to be in a position to consider granting the liquor licenses that are requested.
So
Okay.
moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that the council waive second reading on this ordinance, which has passed. Any further discussion? Alderman Verbeek.
Just curious, Alderman Jacobson, would you be interested in sharing why the no vote?
Again, this is something we've been significantly restricting for years. We have multiple small business owners in the marketplace that have operated their stores without the ability to do these things and have been told no in the past. And again, if you're going to allow competition into the market, which again I don't have an issue with, it should be at a fair and level playing field. I don't think it's fair to allow a new competitor to come in with amenities that existing competitors don't. It hurts your existing business and works against supporting your existing businesses, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
No.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
No.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
6 aye.
Okay. Motion passes. Waiver of second reading has passed. Moving right along to number 3, Resolution 2018-123, authorizing a package liquor license with supplemental drive-through licensure for Haymaker Enterprises, 1221 West Lincoln Highway. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Again, Dean, do you have anything else to add to this?
Just briefly, Mayor, note towards the back of your packet, there is a site layout that has been proposed that has gone through conceptual engineering. This would still be subject to zoning approvals for the site. Again, it would go through a zoning process and come back for action in that regard at a later date. The site layout does show the proposed configuration of 2 of the 3 spaces in the commercial establishment. The restrictions that are included in this liquor license include all of the potential restrictions that are built into the ordinance, and those largely come as a result of suggestions from the applicant. The only other thing I would note is that Haymaker Enterprises is the grandparent level entity that currently operates Fatty's. We're anticipating that between now and when the license actually issues, that there would be a subsidiary entity formed that would have a different name. So this license would be authorized for Haymaker Enterprises, but ultimately would be issued to another corporate entity under 100% common ownership. So be subject to the same background, same investigation. If there are any change in that, it would have to come back to council for further evaluation.
Alderman Fagan.
Dean, on this, what you're bringing to us now, we're going to have to vote on again, right?
What we
After
are,
it comes out of zoning?
Right. So essentially the question for Mr. Doby is it worth investing the effort and funding in developing the full site plan, the building elevations, going through a zoning process? And if he gets to the end of that and finds that the liquor license won't work, then developing this site plan further doesn't make a lot of sense.
But so if this all passes, then the only other thing that has to be passed is the zoning.
That's correct.
Okay. The other thing is on the entrance and exit on this, that cuts into the state highway, are they using the existing cut, or are they going to have to go to the state if they change that cut? And is that appropriate for entrance and exit?
So the full site geometrics and the determination of appropriate access would be reviewed through the zoning process. I believe this is an existing cut that's there that they would be utilizing, although we have talked at the staff level about having discussions with the state about the access points really consistently on West Lincoln Highway and confirming that we're aligning them in a fashion that they would support.
Yeah, the reason why I bring that up is, I know when you cut into a state highway, they have a say-so on it, and I just want to make sure that's been brought out.
Yes, in the early staff discussions it has been. The drive-through is actually configured to allow for an extended drive lane after the point of transaction. So there's more distance here to drive on the site and have room to queue cars after the drive-through than in many of the other drive-throughs we have in the community. The very early review has been positive, but those issues would go through the zoning review process.
Okay.
Alderman Verbeek.
I'd just like to commend staff and Mr. Doby on this process. I really like how this has gone, and council gets information, I think, to give the owner that confidence that this is worthwhile to pursue, move forward with. And Mr. Doby, thanks for your many years of successful business in the 6th Ward, certainly leading the way for what we have to offer. So thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Motion is approved. Thank you. Finally, Resolution 2018-124, authorizing a bar liquor license with supplemental licensure for video gaming for Haymaker Enterprises, 1221 West Lincoln Highway. Motion.
Motion, Mayor.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. And once again, our city attorney, Dean Frieder.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this would be the second build-out in this facility. I want to note that this would be a completely separate commercial tenancy within the building. There aren't common bathrooms, there aren't common facilities being used, so this would be operated as a completely independent liquor licensee. This would be for what we would customarily refer to as a video gaming enterprise. Mr. Doby did come in and seek approval of one of the available limited licenses that the city does have to offer at this point in time. Did timely apply for that. He has gone through kind of a protracted review process as we work through the changes with regard to the other proposed establishments here. At this point in time, again, this does have a positive recommendation. It is still subject to zoning approval, and it is subject to the same condition I mentioned earlier, that in all likelihood this will be owned by a subsidiary corporation that's under 100% common ownership with Haymaker Enterprises.
Alderman Norrico.
We would have another opportunity to say yes or no to more video gaming, correct? In other words, saying yes today does not guarantee that there's going to be video gaming at that site.
This approval would be for the bar liquor license with supplemental licensure for video gaming, but the license itself indicates it's conditioned on him obtaining a special use permit to authorize that zoning use. So unless and until that zoning is approved, this license is of no force or effect. So yes, it comes back for another vote before council with regard to whether the zoning and use is appropriate for this site.
Okay, because we continue to have these discussions about video gaming, and I recognize the commercial value, but I also still have concerns about being known as the greater Midwest capital of video gaming. I don't think we're there yet, and I don't mean to demean, you know, Jeff, what you're trying to do or anything. But this puts it in a better perspective, and we'll have more time, in other words, and, you know, just the whole range of factors to take a look at.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I would note as well, some months ago, the council opened up a window for a limited number of applications. And this was one of the applications that was received in response to that window.
Okay.
Mr. Doby has been very deliberate in how he approaches this and works through staff with regard to any of the concerns at the site. So that's why it's coming to you a little bit later, but he's been diligently pursuing this now for several months.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Any further discussion on this? Alderman Favor.
Yeah, I was going to ask again, I thought that's what the limited license was from what we had kind of talked about having a few. I'm not a fan of video gaming. As Alderman Norrico said, I'd like to see more of a moratorium on it in DeKalb. So I don't know what else I can say. I'm going to vote no on that. I certainly appreciate your investment in the community. Video gaming isn't one of the businesses that I heartily support. So I'm going to vote no.
You say you hardly support, not heartily.
No, I do not heartily support it.
You do not heartily. Yes.
I don't have a passion for it, no.
I thought I knew the answer to that, Tony, but I just wanted to clarify. Any further questions or comments? Roll call.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
No.
Jacobson,
Alderman Jacobson has recused himself.
thank you. Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
6-0.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving right along, number 5, Resolution 2018-125, authorizing the bid to Irving Construction Company in the amount of $234,371 for construction of the DeKalb Sycamore Area Transportation Study Bus Shelter Project with a not-to-exceed amount of $279,371. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. With further information on this is our new city engineer, Zach Gill.
Mayor Smith, City Council. In interest of connectivity, accessibility, and improved service for our ridership, DSATs looked at some upgrades to the layout of their bus stops around town. You probably recall earlier this summer they brought forward that plan of attack and what that would include.
as well as the upgrades with shelters, benches, trash cans, and some better concrete work and accessibility to them. Given that approval, they went forward, solicited bids. We had 3 bidders. They were open publicly just here on the 17th. The low bidder of Urban Construction was considered qualified, so we're bringing that forward for approval. One note in the numbers that is somewhat unconventional. You see almost 20% there for approval. That is due to a couple of factors. 3% of that additional $45,000 is just a standard from the base bid, 3% for any overruns. $23,000 of that 45 is from a situation where the county health department initially was in the project, requested to be removed from consideration for the new shelter. After bid, they came back and asked to be re-added and receive a shelter. So that amount there is basically adding them back in. It actually is in the plans as bid, but then they were given a last-minute addendum to remove those quantities. Anyways, the other $15,000, on my first day in the job, Mr. Holdman asked me to look and see if we could extend a safer spot for a bus to pull off at Dresser and Wildflower. That was there, that would serve the high school. This would be for the eastbound bus. The standard convention now for safety is for the bus to pull completely through a signalized intersection and rest on the far side. Right now, that could not be accommodated with what's there, so this would be a slight, just some regrading, some fill, and additional pavement there, as well as addition of sidewalk, kind of curved around north there from Wildflower to make a nice, safe, comfortable landing spot for both the driver and the ridership. So that also would be a change order, one that we could not shoehorn into the plans prior to the bid, though we knew we wanted to try to achieve that. That would be represented by the other $15,000. So 23, 15, and 7 is where you get that a little bit of a whopper of a potential, what looks like a change order, though it's work, I think, that was in the spirit of what we were trying to achieve with the project.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Any further discussion on this? Roll call.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko? Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Thank you.
8 aye.
I think it might be appropriate here, and Molly, I don't know who can address this, but Steve Irving, who is the principal of Irving Construction Company, has tendered his resignation from, is it Zoning Board of Appeals Commission?
The Building Code Board of Appeals.
The Zoning Board of Appeals, just to, get away from any potential conflict of interest. Mr. Irving had been a valuable member of that, but I think realizing that he's got a business to run and all that, he has tendered his resignation. So I thought that might be appropriate to mention that at this point. Okay, item number 6, Resolution 2018-126, authorizing the Finance Department to extend a line of credit to provide payment on transit services provided by the Voluntary Action Center of DeKalb County from July 1, 2018 through July 31, 2018 via the City General Fund in lieu of delayed downstate operating assistance program grant funding to ensure uninterrupted public transit service until the grant funds are received for an additional $179,526.16 for a total line of credit not to exceed $558,168.51. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and I think we've discussed this somewhat before, but Brian Dixon, why don't you elaborate on this?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. As you recall, at the last meeting, I presented a request for payment to VAC for their outstanding May and June invoices, as we had not yet received
funds from our state fiscal year 2018 grants, as they require us to do like a fifth quarter reimbursement for our final actual costs. We have not yet received those funds. However, I did talk to IDOT, our IDOT representative today, and it has been authorized by their staff and has been forwarded to the state comptroller. And so generally, once it's in the comptroller's office, we receive payment on that within 1 to 2 weeks. So I expect those funds to be reimbursed hopefully this week. Now, for the July invoice, due to the state delays in processing, our new state fiscal year 2019 dope contract has not been received by the city yet. They are still working on it, as I've mentioned previously, due to all the new regulations with GATA. The processing of those grants has taken an extended amount of time. I had talked to them. They're hoping to send out those new contracts, which will cover July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019. Hopefully by this month or early next month, so we would be bringing approval of that contract and our request for the first quarter and second quarter 2019 funds once that grant is approved by City Council and sent back to IDOT. However, in the meantime, the cost for VAC to continue operations of their transit in the area without payments from the city general fund, which will be reimbursed by the state grant funds once received. They can only sustain operations for a month or two before they start having severe financial issues. Therefore, at the request of City Council at the last meeting to bring forward each invoice individually as they are received, we have received the July invoice from VAC, where they are seeking the reimbursement of $179,526 for payment as approved by the City Council, and which would right now bring the total line of credit to $558,168. As noted, hopefully within the week, the May and June invoices will be reimbursed to the city. Therefore, I am seeking approval from City Council to allow the Finance Department to make payments on VAC's July invoice.
I know this is more time consuming for you, certainly more time consuming for the council to listen to this, but as you suggested, it was the sense of the council at last meeting that we do it incrementally, if you will. So we have a motion on the floor, a second regarding approval of the July invoices, and Alderman Verbeek.
The sign still doesn't say City of DeKalb Bank. All I can anticipate is this happening over and over and over again. And the guarantor is the state of Illinois. We cannot risk it, so I'll be voting no.
Alderman Fanouken.
I'd like to point out to Alderman Verbeek, though, that in this instance, VAC is actually billing us for this service, and that it's the state then pays the city back, which we then pass through to VAC. So, I mean, we are the buyer of the services at this point, so it's not like we're actually out there loaning them money. It's just that when we wait from the state for the money to come through.
Thank you, Alderman Verbeek. Thank you, Alderman Fanouken. Roll call.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbeek,
No.
Favor,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
7 aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you. Number 7, Resolution 2018-127, authorizing an objection to a request for a special use or the development, construction, operation, and maintenance of a community solar garden pursuant to DeKalb County Case DK 18-32 on properties located on Twombly Road, approximately 1,300 feet west of Annie Glidden Road in DeKalb Township, DeKalb County. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. With further explanation of this is our Community Development Director, Joellen Charlton.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to give pretty much the same presentation I gave to our Planning and Zoning Commission last week when we presented this case. Although looking at a DeKalb County case is a little unusual, perhaps some of our senior members on the council may have gone through this, but I do want to spend a little bit of time to tell you why we're here to look at this case. When you have projects in the unincorporated parts of the county that lie within 1.5 miles of our municipal boundary, the state statutes give local governments the ability to review and comment on those. So the county is required, much like we are, required to provide surrounding neighbors within 250 feet of a site legal notice that the hearing is going to occur on a certain date and time. The county is required to provide the city with that same notice of public hearing so that we can take a look at the case, make sure it complies with our comprehensive plan, and provide any comments with regard to how the project matches our comprehensive plan for other items like transportation and other impacts. So in this particular case, I want to go through a little bit about the project itself. The hearing itself is going to be held on September 13th. That's this Thursday at 1:30. And the county holds these hearings at their administrative center before a hearing officer. So it is during the day at 1:30. And anybody within 250 feet or the city or others who are interested to come and participate have the opportunity to do that and have their testimony entered officially into the record at that time. So one of the things, again, that the city wanted to do was to make sure that we would have an opportunity for the Planning and Zoning Commission to hear this case and provide you with a recommendation, and then to have the council's recommendation, whatever that might be, and we do have a recommendation, entered into the official record that is captured by the hearing officer on Thursday. Again, the state statutes provide us with that opportunity. We did very quickly have an opportunity to get it before the Planning and Zoning Commission. We did receive notice from the county of the public hearing. They actually sent us the official notice late last month, and we had about a month to take a look at it. We had been in discussion with the property owners in the counties. They had said that it was coming and that we might be taking a look at this possibility, but in terms of the official notice, that's when it was received. The council can make an official objection to any part of the proposed project, and that would be provided to the hearing officer, and then that hearing or that objection would be presented to the council, to the county board, when they consider the motion before them for official action. One of the things that we provided to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I think is in your report, again, we put this together pretty quickly, our initial impression was that an official objection would
force a higher vote by the council to approve that. Under further review with our city attorney, that higher vote doesn't occur with a special use. It only occurs with a rezoning or a text amendment. And we're going to talk about a text amendment as it relates to the wind ordinance coming up. But I did want to make that one note of difference from the staff report and from our earlier report to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So just real quickly, I'm going to provide a brief overview of what this project is. I also want to note that both the property owner and their representative are in the audience tonight and are, as they were at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We had discussions with them that night as well as ongoing discussions since that time. So I know we're attempting to work together to put something forward that the city ultimately can be supportive of. So the site plan is shown on the screen in the PowerPoint presentation. This 80-acre site that's unincorporated is on the southwest corner of Twombly and Annie Glidden Road. So the area marked county at the top of that picture is the unincorporated property. The entire 80 acres in that quarter or that area is shown with suburban estates apartments, suburban apartments themselves, and then 2 vacant properties that until recently, or actually at this time, are being farmed. The Solar Garden site is in the southwest quadrant of that 80 acres. Located immediately south of that dashed line is the City of Dekalb property. So this proposed Solar Garden site is immediately adjacent to City of Dekalb property and would have an impact on properties that front on Aspen Court and Regent Drive. So taking that 80-acre site, now we're just looking at the west half of that site. So Suburban Estates Apartments is shown just south of Twombly Road at the top end of that drawing. And what you see with the lines that are shown are the arrays of solar panels as they would be provided on this 20-acre site. The 2 sides of this are being proposed based on the topography of the site. So there is a major drainage pattern that occurs down the middle of the site, and that's why they have 2 components to this project. Also, what you can see from this is some of the setbacks that they're proposing, most importantly from the Dekalb property to the south. They do have a healthy setback in that location. You can't see it very well on this site plan, but they do propose to fully enclose the site with what they call a deer fence, and I'll have a picture of that you can see in just a second. Also of note is the access to the property. So on the northeast corner of the array, so kind of on the right side of all of the vertical lines, you see some pavement coming in there and a building. That is the proposed site or location where people would be able to come in and access this site. Some of the other solar projects that we've looked at in other areas of town that you'll be seeing coming forward at some point in the future usually have one whole side. So typically it's common to have them adjacent to a right-of-way with some other type of access, either a gravel road or some type of paved system to provide access into the property. And that gets important when we talk about how our emergency personnel would access the site. They're going to need to be able to get within those gates. So we need to talk to them about gates and emergency Knox box or other types of access to the property. And then once they're within the site, you know, what happens if a mower or some other maintenance worker or something happens in a far corner of the site that's not served by with any type of access. So that is one of the concerns that we have talked about. Again, this is the representation of the type of fencing that would be proposed around the site. It is something that they've worked with in other areas. It allows wildlife to come and go through the site, but keeps some of the unattractive people from coming in, keeps unwanted people out of the site. This is an image of what the solar garden array would appear like. So one of the things that you'll notice in this array is that the solar panels are arranged in a north-south pattern. So the panels themselves actually follow the sun. So they'll be tilted to the east in the morning, and then as the sun moves across the sky throughout the day, they would then be facing west at the end of the night. So in this particular case, this would be as you would view the panels either in the east in the morning or the west at night. If you're to the south, you're going to be looking at the lines of the arrays. One of the things I mentioned earlier is that we want to measure how this project compares to the city's comprehensive plan. The dark line at the top is Twombly, and the darker line coming down the right side is Annie Glidden Road. So you can see the quadrant of properties represented by colors, and the light tan color in the southwest corner is the location of the proposed solar garden. And it does recommend medium density residential uses. One of the things, given that our plan is pretty old at 2005 comprehensive plan, is solar garden and other renewable energy sources probably weren't a hot topic at that point. So, you know, we look at the use and we want to comment on the use, but the fact that it doesn't meet the use alone would not be a reason to not support this project. One of the other things I wanted to note in this particular picture is the two light colored lines where the arrows are pointing to. That is a representation in our plan that means that a right-of-way or some future roadway connection is recommended. If you are familiar with the site to the south of this proposed area, this multiple family residential in Dekalb is accessible only by two ways in and out of all of those properties, and that's from Annie Glidden Road. You note that we have roads that dead end to the west and then dead end into the cornfield. Obviously, our long-range plan would show extensions into that area. The long-range plan showing the north-south extension is another way to provide a way in and out of that site. With the limited amount of time, we didn't really get to get too much into the engineering review, but their packet did include information on their grading. There's a 10-foot grade difference between the north side of this property and the south side of this property, with the south side being lower. So all of the natural grading on this property does drain water to the south to property that's in the city. As a farm field, obviously, that includes a lot of runoff right now. What they would do as part of their proposal is underplant a lot of these arrays with native grasses and other flowering perennials that would help be a little bit more absorbent. We did look at the drain tile exhibit. They're required to provide information on any existing drain tiles, and we can take a look at the quality of those drain tiles. They do show them depositing their stormwater onto city property to the south, so we want to pay a little bit more of attention to that. I don't think it's anything that we can't overcome, but again, in the short time frame that we had, we weren't really able to spend a lot of time looking as we needed to on those issues. So again, just real high level overview. We do want to take a look at the use and give people to the south an opportunity to comment to our Planning and Zoning Commission and our City Council what those impacts might be. I've talked about renewable energy, both solar and wind, with various people, and depending on who you talk to, it's a 50-50 shot whether people will support it and say that it's great and it's the wave of the future. I've also talked to people who, especially when they live next to it, have concerns, and they want to talk about mitigating impacts on their property. How do we screen it? Can we put landscaping in? Is a deer fence the right kind of fence? Again, some of the other issues we talked about, we don't really want to have them build those north-south streets at this point. It doesn't warrant that. But I think what we want to do is talk to them about the possibility of dedicating the right-of-way so that we make sure that when we need to build that road in the future, that we have the means to do that, and this is the time to do it. If this property was being built in the city at this point, these are the types of improvements we would be requiring of them to come through our process. Drainage is another concern that I already discussed. In addition to access, which the fire department has some concerns and we want to work through those issues with the applicant, water availability is another concern. This entire area is served only by well water, and they don't have access to a potable water supply from the city at this point. We have been told that there are fire hydrants on the site that are served by those wells, although we haven't really confirmed that in some of the drawings, so that's another thing that we really feel we'd want to spend a little bit of time working with the applicant on. So when we presented the options to the Planning and Zoning Commission, we just we outlined 3 options, and we indicated that you could either support the project, in which case we don't really need to do anything. We could let the project play out through the hearing officer, and the city's actions, you know, the county would do with it as they would through their process. The second option would be to slow the process down and request that the county hearing officer grant a continuance to their hearing for at least 60 days, and we believe that amount of time would give us time to work with the applicant, to go through all of these issues and try to see if we can agree to plan revisions that would address the items that we're talking about. The other final option that we presented was that they could just object to the project or object to the use and any of the concerns that were outlined. The consensus of the Planning and Zoning Commission was that they are supportive of renewable energy as a topic, and really chose to hone in on the second option, which was to slow it down. At that point, I know we had Brett Robinson, who is the applicant for the owner, Dr. Sean Betty, came up and gave some comments in support of wanting to work with the city and moving forward in that direction. I think as they kind of figured out what was happening and what that would mean to their timeline, the owner did reach out to both myself and I believe the mayor over the weekend to express some concerns. They want to keep the process moving. I think they have some investment in the project so far. In my conversations with them today, again, they do want to work with the city, but they are concerned about time. I did talk through those timelines with them, and 60 days sounds like a long time, but by the time we meet with them next week, if we were to do that, come up with a final plan, and if we want to then get that plan to the Planning and Zoning Commission, that time frame gets us at a Planning and Zoning Commission in the middle of next month, which means getting to council at their first meeting in November. So that is about that 60-day time frame. We might have an opportunity to push it up if we do another Wednesday Planning and Zoning Commission and right to a Monday council meeting like we did with this particular case. So I told them that we would do what we can to work as quickly as we could, but that it would be my recommendation to stick with the 60 days. So the resolution, having said all of that, the resolution you're being asked to consider tonight would be a resolution objecting to the city's provision of their case in point or finalizing the testimony until 60 days has occurred in order to give us time to work through these issues with the applicant. So that concludes my remarks. I believe one or both of the applicants may have signed something to speak tonight.
Yes, we have a speaker request form from Brett Robinson, who represents the owner, and I know Mr. Robinson appeared before the Planning and Zoning Commission the other night.
Thank you. Yeah, really, what she did a great job, thank you, of explaining it. We're on a timeline pushed up against winter. That's, you know, that's really the bottom line. We want to get the post in the ground before winter. So what we're asking you to consider is, instead of 60 days, just keep up with the county board. Let's get in lockstep with the county board, and it seems like they're farther ahead. We haven't had the public hearing, but our fear is if the city of Dekalb goes and objects and pushes it out 60 days, that then the county's going to have to stop and wait for the city to catch up. And I'll be here, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day to help you understand what's going on, and we plan on working as close as we can with the city to do all the provisions, listen to your neighbors, or to our neighbors' considerations. We've already worked out the road thing. We've got fire hydrants. I think we've got everything ready, and we've submitted it. So, all I'm asking for on
my client's behalf is that we keep in lockstep with the county. That's it.
Are you suggesting then, Mr. Robinson, that if we support the project to the point where the council tonight took no action, we rejected this proposal tonight, that we would then, in fact, in your opinion, be in lockstep with the county? My question to both of you, do you have a sense at this point what kind of support you have on this project from the county?
Yes, we've got a report from the county that they've given us certain conditions on some certain types of plantings and some other things that we have to do, and we have to keep the drain tile intact. They've got an entire ordinance that we've got to follow. That's a step-by-step thing, and it's a pretty strict ordinance. So we've already made the plans to match that. So now we're just working in the provisions, the extra provisions, and we'd work your provisions in right with the counties in the same time. Okay. That's what I'm saying about lockstep. We'll work with you, say, hey, the county wants us to do this. How does that work for you? We'll go back and forth. It's only 7-8 miles between. So.
Yeah, I may have some additional questions, but I would like to turn it over to City Council. Alderman Fagan.
I've got several questions. Whenever solar power comes up, number one question is, who gets the solar energy?
The residents in the area.
And how is that going to be done?
Well, from a technical standpoint, we put it onto ComEd's grid, but path of least resistance, it just comes back right to the apartment buildings if they're using as much power as the thing
and
produces.
Is there, from an economic point of view, is there any difference whether the power comes from your panels or if it comes from down the road from the line?
Yes, there is. There's two scenarios here. One is we would provide the residents of the apartment building that power for a discounted rate.
All right, but then I just want to stop you right there, and that's fine for the apartment owners. But we're talking about the city of Dekalb here, and those apartments aren't in the city of Dekalb. So I mean, we're kind of looking at the city of Dekalb point of view also.
Okay, and I missed your point.
And I guess you're saying it would be a discount to the apartment buildings, but what about, it goes along with the next question I have, is those property owners that own the apartment buildings over here to the south, will they get a discount just like the apartment buildings to the north?
Scenario 2 is what's called a community solar, and that goes to the we have to sign up for that and be approved. We should be, because we're 100% residential. And then you take out subscriptions for the community solar, and then they would get, if they take out a subscription, if they decide to do that, they could get the same rate as the apartment dwellers would get.
All right, then what you're saying is the apartment buildings would get it automatically, but the other people will have to subscribe to it?
Yeah, well,
okay.
Both would have to subscribe to it.
Both, okay. And then I guess my question to Joe Ellen is, the property owners that are in the city limits, that's just south of this property here, have they all been contacted?
The county's notice requirements would be the same as the city, so those that fall within the 250-foot radius would have been contacted, but not necessarily beyond that.
Okay, and then I guess the other thing I'm very concerned about is the drainage. I mean, it all comes down to into the city.
Let me talk about that. There's a, can you switch that up to the picture of the pond?
The pond or that?
The one with the rose on it. Now, okay, this pond was built, and it's a lake, and it's even
It's even got a name, which is strange, Horseshoe Lake.
Okay.
And that's an official county name for it. It's got a drainage overflow. It goes through here, and then there's gravel, actually riprap. It's shown by this oblong thing. And then it is, right now, it soaks in. It's not a river or anything that you can see that it flows into the parks pond.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no drainage. They plant their crops right through there, so it's not a runoff thing at all.
Well, I understand now with crops, but I'm just saying is when you put in those panels
Mhm.
and you do your excavating, it's not going to be as if the crops are going to be sucking up the water. It's going to you're going to have a runoff there. I would assume so. I'm no engineer, but
Yeah, we're gonna have much better, as you put it, soaking up of the water by the plantings that the county is requiring us to put under there. So that does two things. One is it holds the water in the plants so they don't scorch in the heat of the summer. They're specifically designed to do that, or specifically selected to do that. And it also slows the runoff down from bare, corn is just a plant and space in between it, and they run off. Typically, they're planting the corn this way, so be a little bit.
Okay. All right.
And then, secondly, these panels take up part of the space, so the rain doesn't hit the ground direct. Anyways, it runs off the panel, so it's delayed.
Okay. Well, that doesn't help me. But the other thing is, after 25, 30 years, and it's not being used anymore, you have to redo it or whatever. What guarantee do you have with the county on removal?
The county has us have a bond to remove it with an estimate that's reviewed by the county engineer.
Okay.
And so there's basically an annuity plan that is in effect that they have access to in the case of default or something like that.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
My personal feeling is there are so many questions, and what was it, the 13th of September was the first?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just being brought up to us now on the 10th. I'm all for waiting, and I don't have a problem waiting the 60 days. I suggest we do wait for the 60 days.
Any other comments? Alderman Favor.
When you came up, did you say that we have the right-of-way for the access, or is that not been?
We do not have the right-of-way currently, so one of the things we just started talking about today was how they could amend their site plan or tighten up the arrays east and west to provide the appropriate width of right-of-way on at least the west side, if not both sides. Once we get on the east side, we then also need to take a look at what that right-of-way is impacting in terms of existing improvements. They do have some utilities. So there's just some work we need to do to select the correct width and then align it appropriately so that when something is built, we're not creating a problem.
Right. So, I mean, for me, I don't have anything. I'm in support of the project itself. I love the idea of the solar farm. Again, I don't feel that the drainage is going to be an issue because the prairie is going to be, it's going to hold back more soil and water retention than just the bare farmland. But I guess I can understand the fence, potentially the very tall fence, and the what do they call it? The attractive nuisance, maybe of an empty lot that's dark, in a highly populated neighborhood. That I could see that as being the only, for me, that would be the only objection, but I don't think you want to put lights up or anything like that. But I'm in support of the project. Let me ask you this. If we went, let's say we didn't do anything, that then removes our ability as the city to do any sort of, to bring any other concerns to the county?
I'm going to listen to your concerns
regardless of that. I think that the county and the city's concerns align together pretty closely anyways. I'm hearing basically the same thing from you folks that I'm hearing from those other folks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll sign a piece of paper that says that we'll continue working with you. I just want us, again, I just want us to be in lockstep with the city. Don't want to be held up by the city, you know, at the county end. Don't want to be held up at the county with the city. I just want to be in lockstep with each other.
And what you're saying here is that if we pass this ordinance tonight, which authorizes Joellen and our staff to request that 60-day delay at this project, you're not going to get going on the project until probably next spring.
Probably. Depends on the winter.
Yeah, okay, right. Yeah, but it's pushing that timetable back where it's dangerous to you. Yeah. I can understand that. Okay, Alderman Noriko.
But I thought I heard, and Joellen, correct me if I'm misquoting you, that you and your staff would do everything you could to move forward as quickly as possible, but you are also bound by certain dates because of when the council meets. So regardless of what you might want to do in every best effort, you work within certain constraints, and you also have other projects too. So I have to believe that you're saying 60 days gives you enough time to examine the issues, but is a reasonable amount of time. And, you know, I've seen you at work that, you know, I have every confidence that you'll be aware of, you know, the developer's needs and time frame, but still balancing that against other responsibilities too. I mean, I don't want to so tie, you know, our staff's hands that they're dying of exhaustion. They may be now anyway, but.
There's no exhaustion in this city hall. Alderman Finucane.
Well, I've always been a big fan of renewable energy and different ways to go about it. But I don't understand why we can't just go to the hearing on Thursday and voice our concerns and not ask for a delay. I think that that's reason enough, and then we can work with the county as this moves forward, because I'd hate to see it delayed, you know, at this point 6 months is what we're talking about, a delay. And I just assume that that's how that we would proceed, is just to have staff go voice their concerns at the hearing and move forward and continue to work with the county and with the developer.
Alderman Jacobson.
I had difficulty reading through it, and just to be clear, this is going to be owned by a third-party company, and it'll be on a land lease, correct? It will be the owner of?
The owner of the apartment buildings and the owner of the solar farm are the same people.
Are the same, so it'll be wholly owned. Again, I think there's other issues we need to address, whether that's at our level or the county level. There are some significant complaints about this property by the tenants out there right now, whether it's water quality or lack of access to water or crime issues that are going on in this property that, while it's not necessarily our responsibility, we're well aware of what's going on there. And again, to turn this into a very profitable cash cow for an owner that has neglected the property and allowed some of these issues to continue now for months down the road, I think we should require, at least at our level and or the county level, or strongly encourage they do as it's their jurisdiction, that these issues get taken care of. Again, there's residents there suffering living in these properties every day. There are dozens of contractors, many of them day laborers from the neighborhood,
Jacobson, can I
that have not been paid for working in that property for their significant labor. And it's gotten to the point where many of the residents of my neighborhood are very vocal about this property and the ownership of it. And again, for me to say, hey, yeah, we're going to give our support so the ownership can continue to pull the handle on the slot machine off this property, I have some significant concerns there. Without some assurances that the ownership is going to invest in this property and create a long-term safe and quality site for residential use, rather than something that's going to sit and generate cash without requiring much maintenance or work.
Well, my question to you, Dave, is that looking at the resolution before us, would you be supportive of moving forward either with the delay, if you will, that our community development staff is asking for, or if you would even go so far as to support Alderman Fanouken's suggestion that we simply we voice our concerns at the hearing?
I would like to interrupt just for a minute. Alderman Jacobson. Dr. Betty and his family have only owned this property for 2.5 years. So far they've put well over $1 million into the property to try to fix it up and work it out so that it's a better place to live. And this solar farm is a major part of doing it. They're trying to make it into garden type apartments and do a lot more landscaping on the outside, and they're also spending substantial money on the inside, taking apartments off of the rent rolls and refurbishing them and reworking them. And they're doing water quality fix-ups. They're bringing cable TV and Wi-Fi into them. They're spending some major dollars to bring it back from the dead. And that's,
Again,
it's
in the
not
interim, much like one of our troublesome landlords in our jurisdiction, the residents continue to suffer. Again, I was on a group this week where there's residents claiming they haven't had running hot water in their apartments for 6 months and aren't being released from those leases. They're showing pictures of the water in black or brown condition coming directly from their faucets. I mean, that's worrisome for me to say, again, we have some check and balance at our level at this point, that those issues aren't rectified. And again, it's not just coming from 1 or 2 residents. I've gotten dozens of complaints by people that have lived there, by the adjacent neighbors, by county officials, by county sheriff's officials. Again, it's not, as a landlord, understanding that very intimately, that you can always have a problem tenant. You can always get that very vocal person that, for whatever reason, wants to complain. This is dozens and dozens and dozens of complaints. And I've had to defend it for years as well. We don't control that property. It's not in the city. And again, to some case, that's an easy way to back off the issue. But again, if we have some level of oversight at this point, and it requires our approval to any stretch, at the very least, we should have the county look into it and have a reasonable, satisfied answer that they feel that the water quality on that site is adequate and is correct, and reach out to some of those residents that are being very vocal to try to understand, is this a legitimate issue, or is it something that, again, is a troubled tenant, 1 or 2 at a time?
Mr. Jacobson, with due respect to you, and we have taken this property about 2.5 years ago. At this time, the property had no landscaping. They had an old boiler system which was running 40, 50 years old system, which basically had a lot of pipe which was bursting under the ground. We basically changed we put new boiler systems in every building. We put new water system for every building. We still have a well which basically has a little tinge of yellow water which people complain about. But we have a EPA check the water quality every week, and they pass us with the flying colors. So the color is maybe a factor, and the people who complain about these things, and if you're a landlord, 90% of the people who complain about some issue is either they've been kicked out because they're not paying the rent, or they are basically just a troublemaker. And if you look at the whole demographics of this town, and I saw a newspaper article where there's crime in this town.
If you say to me that this property has more crime than any other town, any other place in DeKalb, I think you're wrong about it. Secondly, we had every minute of the time we are working hard to make sure the property looks decent. I have put almost 3,000 trees in this property over the last 2.5 years. 3,000 trees. We spent about close to $675,000 to putting the landscape on this. We have put a boiler system which was close to about $1.5 million, which we put the new boiler system and the water system. I spent about I think Mr. Robinson was wrong. I've spent about $9 million over the last 2.5 years to improve the quality of these apartments. So I take very big offense when somebody says to me that we have a bad tenants here who are crying about the fact that they don't have a good services. We do everything possible to make sure that people are being given a better housing, and this is all what we do is a free Wi-Fi system we are trying to create for the people. We are giving a free water to these people. We basically have a sewer, definitely is free, but we are also trying to bring the electricity to those people at a 35, 40%, 50% discounted prices. Whatever we're going to save from the comet, we're going to pass it on to the tenants. Yeah, I'm sure still people are going to be unhappy because they have to pay the rent. Whenever the rent time comes, that's when people start to complain about the fact that they basically need, or their water quality is bad, or I have 6 months of hot water. This is all BS. Everybody who has received, there was never a hot water problem except whenever the pipe bursted under the ground, we had to replace the pipe. It because it may happen in the middle of the winter time, so it may take 2 days or 3 days to get the water corrected. But there was never an issue that the 6 months time that people did not have the hot water. This is all basically a creation by the people who basically have learned to live free. And anytime they have an obligation or responsibility to pay their bills, you're going to find that they're going to go down to Walmart and say, this toy was broken and because you give me the refund back. This is what the culture of this whole system nowadays is. Anytime people have to pay, they basically find an excuse to not to pay.
I'm not so sure that this conversation and this deliberation has morphed into something that is not pertinent to this particular.
He brought it up.
He brought it up. And he's the one, maybe he was a tenant who doesn't want to pay the rent.
I am addressing my comments to Alderman Jacobson as well as I am addressing him to you. So please, all I'm saying is that I think we are getting a little off base here. What we want to do is take a look at the resolution that is before us. And we want to have an intelligent dialogue regarding that. Okay? If there are other issues that we need to address at another time, that may be the case. I don't think those are pertinent now. And I would be the first to admit if I'm wrong, if other council members feel that we need to discuss some of these other issues. Alderman Verbeek?
Dean, can you help us as to why this property is not annexed into the city of DeKalb? It's surrounded. We went through some annexation, not completely surrounded, but we went through some annexations some years ago with contiguous properties in the city that weren't annexed, so why not here?
Because the property is not completely surrounded, it is not eligible for forcible annexation, and the city has periodically, I think going back immediately before this owner, there was an investor that had contemplated purchasing the property and redeveloping it and making a substantial investment in it, and they ultimately elected not to proceed forward with that. With the current configuration of the property and the calls for public service there, as we've looked at it kind of conceptually, there's not a significant advantage to the city in annexing it and taking over that responsibility on the public safety side. We do currently provide fire service for the district, but we're not the primary response on police issues. So really, there's not a significant benefit to the city in taking on those responsibilities.
Thank you.
Alderman Fagan.
I understand that for some unseen reasons that we want to push this through and work with the county, but our staff is telling us that they suggest that we wait minimum 60 days to work through everything. And it, as Joellen said, it might not be 60 days. It might be 40 days, might be 30 days. But our staff is suggesting to us to give us that time for more feedback and, like a better word, is digging into this. But if our staff is recommending it, I'm going to vote that way.
Furthermore, our Planning and Zoning Commission has voted unanimously to support the request of the planning officer, the hearing officer for the county, to delay this until such time that the city take a look at this, and that's what the resolution calls for. We have a motion on the floor to approve that resolution, and I appreciate your comments, Alderman Fagan, that, you know, what I think we hear tonight is that we're going to try to expedite this as quickly as we possibly can, you know, but to move forward to the pace that some would suggest that we do by simply aligning ourselves with the county may, from what I hear certain council members here saying tonight, might not make sense. But we won't know that until we vote on this particular resolution. Alderman Noriko.
I just want to make sure that I understand what I'm voting on.
Okay.
Which is always a good idea. So if I vote yes on this resolution, is that giving our staff the 60 days?
Yes, it is.
Voting yes is giving your staff the direction to work with the county and request that the county postpone the timeline 60 days.
Okay, so it's the first step in it's starting the process of working with the county.
We're simply saying to the hearing officer, do not approve this project. The city has some additional concerns. We'd like to work with the owner, Mr. Betty, Mr. Robinson, et cetera. Is that not right?
That's correct, and it'll be the county's determination if they heed that request or not, but demonstrating that the request is coming from the city council, we believe is important.
Okay, good. I understand what I'm voting on now.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Fanouken,
No.
Marquardt,
Goodness. I don't like the way it's written. No.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
I'll vote yes with the hope that we can be quicker than 60 days.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
6-0.
Okay. So, thank you, Mr. Betty, Mr. Robinson. Joellen, thank you.
Thank you.
Do your best, I know you will, Joellen, on Thursday to move this thing forward as quickly as we can.
I have done it the same way you dress it. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm shaking more hands tonight.
Yeah, be gentle.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. New or unfinished business? Transition to Lakeshore Recycling Systems update. And we're going to ask our Patrick Didiana from our Public Works staff to address this item. And there is no vote on this item. This is information. And I see Tim Holdeman is in the wings.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This evening I am here along with Josh Connell and Katie Neary of Lakeshore Recycling Systems to provide an update on the city's transition to LRS for the collection of refuse and recycling. This transition can be broken down to 3 phases of implementation. Phase 1, communications, Phase 2, cart delivery, and Phase 3, reconciliation. Phase 1 of the transition plan focused on communications across 5 methods. You'll see, well, they're not on our bullet pointed, but
In addition to the standards methods of press releases and the city website, I'd also like to highlight and thank the local media, WLBK for the on-air interview with the Director Holdeman, Josh Connell, and Katie Neri, and I'd like to thank the Daily Chronicle for articles published on July 21st and August 28th. I'd also like to point out the efforts LRS put forth in supplementing the city communications. The week of July 23rd, LRS mailed out large format brochures to all residents with an active account. On August 16th, 17th, and 18th, LRS ran full-page color ads in the Daily Chronicle. Moving on to Phase 2. Phase 2 focused on cart deliveries. Cart deliveries began on Monday, August 27th, with the first deliveries going to residents with Wednesday scheduled pickup days. For that duration of time, a total of 18,298 carts were delivered through September 3rd, with each day ranging from 2,500 to 3,200 carts being delivered, except for the holiday weekend of September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Those weekend days were scheduled and issued and used as pickup days for residents that may have been missed. I'll now move into Phase 3, the reconciliation. We are calling Phase 3 reconciliation due to the, what we're doing with that is we're looking at special requests that were taken before August 17th, and then the special requests that were taken after August 17th. And we're going through that list and making sure all our residents are receiving those requests. LRS will begin to fill those requests this week on the residents' pickup day. It's important to understand that this list is fluid as residents continue to submit requests. To comment more on the special requests and discuss the first week of operations and field questions, our managing partner, Josh Connell, and municipal manager, Katie Neri. Just like to step up.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Mayor, City Council, whatever residents are left here, which I think is probably the best sign we've got here as far as having some sort of success is that nobody's here, so that's good. At this point, I mean, we're very excited about the transition. Like we stated at the onset, we know it's never going to be perfect, but I think that with 18,400 carts going out, everyone had their cart well before their first pickup day. Probably the most calls we got were over the weekend because of the holiday, which is typical in every community that we service. So we were pretty excited about that. We even ran a truck on Sunday for anybody we missed. It ended up being 5 residents. And I fully anticipated at least 20 or 30, but we had 5 calls. We had a couple came in today that we serviced. So the first pickups have been done. At this point, what you'll see, and I don't know if everyone has the PowerPoint here, we've got approximately 627 homes that are requesting a cart change. These came in after the fact, so we've got about 1,200 moves. So we're delivering one cart, picking up another, and we anticipate getting those done this week. I'm assuming we're going to have some trickle effect next week because even today we had some additional calls coming in. We're even getting calls for residents that are choosing to go with 2 carts for waste or 2 carts for recycling. That is part of the contract, so we're getting those requests out as well. So out of the 18,400 carts, we've got 627 yet to exchange.
Okay. Any further? Let me just say something here. Could I have the first word, Kate?
Oh, I guess. You always turn towards me.
I remember the night that we voted this. And Josh, you came up, and I don't know if you recall this, but I said, you're under a microscope now. You are really going to be put to the test by the residents of the city of Dekalb. I can't tell you, and I would think that other council members may agree with me, I don't know if there's been one issue over the past several months that has created more controversy than the switch from waste management to your company, LRS. I spent a lot of time with folks who talked to me about schedule changes, about, especially on the south side, they didn't have their blue carts on Thursday and then on Friday and then on Saturday, and I talked to a couple of those 5 that you mentioned on Sunday. But I tell you, it's gone remarkably well. We knew that there were going to be glitches. And from my perception, we've tried to do the right thing and take care of the shortcomings that we had, the glitches that we found. So, so that's just that's my thought. And I'm in one of those neighborhoods that I found at the last minute that I'm not having a Thursday pickup, I'm having on a Wednesday pickup. You know, my reaction to that was, we'll get used to it. You know, we'll get used to it. Things change. The only thing constant in life is what, Pat?
Change.
Change. So, with that, Alderman Noriko.
Okay, I've adjusted to the.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, of course, Ward 5, you know, had some issues, you know, one could have predicted, but it's my understanding that the problem with picking up some of the recycling carts has been fixed, and so next week, this week on Friday, our day didn't change. This week on Friday, when we put out the 2 carts, everything will get picked up and all problems will be taken care of.
Yes, and maybe I don't know the problem that existed in Ward 5, but...
there were recycling that wasn't picked up, and
okay.
Actually, of course, your friendly alderman was one of them, and I just thought, well, maybe, you know, it was a little confusing because the basic garbage cart was picked up and my landscape waste was. But I understand it's now all taken care of.
Well, that's good, and I apologize, I wasn't aware of that one. I know, I mean, obviously I knew we had some glitches, and we were trying to use our GPS systems to make sure we covered every street with every truck. I was on call Saturday. So I was working with our team all day, all afternoon Saturday and Saturday evening, calling residents back. You know, we had a lot of calls Saturday just because, you know, here it is noon and we hadn't been there yet. And so I was calling people back after 5 p.m. just saying, hey, did we come for your waste and recycling and yard waste, and making sure that those calls were handled. It was me and our customer service center. We worked till about 7 p.m. Saturday. So and we'll continue to have, I mean, we're going to have glitches like that where, you know, whether it's a vacation driver in the future, but, you know, after a couple pickups, a couple weeks, you know, we're not going to assume that we're going to get everything every day here. We hope we will, but we're going to check. Our supervisors are out in the street. Katie has been remarkable. She's been driving the streets, you know, the 3 pickup days here this past week, and we've had our whole team out there just to make sure that we're not missing anything.
So if somebody calls me and says, you know, something wasn't picked up, should my first question be, did you call the Lakeshore customer service number?
Yes, that's first and foremost, that's the easiest thing to do. If they don't have the number, they could just get the number on the cart too.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Alderman
Very good.
Fagan.
Thank you.
Yeah, one thing that was brought up, well, actually, a couple things. One thing was brought up that it went to a call center. And the people, I think some people didn't understand that once they gave the information that it wasn't going to be relayed till Monday or Tuesday, or actually till Tuesday. So, I mean, there was some confusion on that, not on your part, but just on overall a little confusion. And I also want to point out, and because I actually went out and talked to them and we discussed this, that the same company was hired to drop off the trash bins that were hired by Waste Management to pick them up. So there was some, you know, logistics that I can only imagine what they were going through compared to having 2 separate companies, but that wasn't by your choice.
Well, when they called us and told us, it usually makes it easier because then we could assure that a resident has the one cart taken away and simultaneously, like within an hour in many cases, the new cart's brought in, or the new cart's brought in, old cart's picked up.
Right.
So at least it makes for a smoother transition. Unfortunately, they didn't get the call from Waste Management until we were in the middle of the transition to get some help on picking up carts. So
yeah. You guys did a great job, and like we said, I mean, you're always going to have some glitches.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot imagine trying to make sure that everyone gets a garbage can in this town. I just couldn't imagine.
Absolutely.
well, and there's just little things that you can't make up. I mean, we have carts that are missing after we already delivered it. They'll show up, but they're missing, and we don't ask any questions. We just we get them another cart. So and people will switch sizes with their neighbors too without telling their neighbor. So that doesn't help either. So, especially when driveways are real close together. So, and we understand that. So our team, especially over the weekend, we already started making some of those accommodations when we get those calls. And any calls that come in from staff, we're jumping on them right away. So
I understand that you've taken a line from the old song Chicago or New York, New York, that if you could make it in DeKalb, you could make it anywhere, right? Huh?
absolutely.
Okay, any further comments? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. We're excited to be a partner at DeKalb and look forward to working with you. So
thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, Alderman, not Alderman, but Community Development Director Charlton will speak to this item, DeKalb County text amendments regulating wind energy.
So about the same time we got the notice for the solar farm, we had another notice from the county advising us about their public hearing for their wind ordinance text amendment. So as I indicated earlier, an objection by the city doesn't create a larger vote from the county on special uses, but it does on zoning changes or on text amendments. So if the city were to follow that process through in this case and approve a resolution of objection, it would spark a higher vote requirement. I don't think that's going to be the case in this particular text amendment being proposed. We did present this information to the Planning and Zoning Commission at their meeting on Wednesday as well, knowing that you had this council meeting and the next meeting is the 24th, and the 24th is the date of the hearing. So this was going to be the only time we had an opportunity to do a quick review and provide the Planning and Zoning Commission and the council with any kind of update or report. Again, the meeting, I want to provide a few highlights of the meeting, is on September 24th. There's actually 2 time periods that they're holding the hearing between the hearing officers, and they're both at the Egyptian Theater in downtown DeKalb. The first hearing will be from 1 to 4:30, and the second hearing will be from 6 to 9 p.m. at night when your council meeting is going on. That will be an opportunity for people to take a look at the many months of work that the county has put into this project. For those listening from home, you can go onto the county's website under Hot Topics and find a link to download the specific text of the draft ordinance. I've also provided that link on this screen in case anybody wants to take a look at that link and key it into your computer right now. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time talking. I know we talked a lot about solar, and with the wind ordinance, we had one main concern. That one main concern was setbacks from a municipality. And I know it had a lot of conversation and, is it 1.5 miles? Is it 3? What happens between 0 and 1.5? And what happens between 1.5 and 3? And we had been apprised of an update on where the county sat when I sit as a member of the DeKalb County Regional Plan Commission. So we had received an update, and I thought I understood it until I received the draft. My concern with the draft was that it indicated that the city of DeKalb, or any setback from any municipality, would be 3 miles. However, a municipality could waive that setback requirement. They don't really talk about what that process is, so if they proceed down that path, we might need to come up with some procedure of how we do that. My main concern was what happens if it's between 0 and 1.5 miles, because they didn't address that in their code. After further conversation between the mayor and some of his counterparts that have been attending these meetings and conferring with our city attorney, Dean Frieders, it's my understanding that the state statute for counties does already set the setback at 1.5 miles for any facility. So my concern is addressed in the county statute. So I think that's the main thing that was out there. Highly encourage people to take a look at it. They looked at everything from height, color, setbacks to property lines, thing called flicker, and a lot of definitions of things I wasn't completely familiar with. They've done a good job defining all of those terms and providing very good public disclosure on everything that they went through to try and put together a really good ordinance, including a topic that one of you discussed with solar, which is decommissioning. I think they spent a lot of time talking about what happens when these things are no longer working, they get abandoned. The county, I think, in both cases is requiring that be secured by some kind of an escrow that could be drawn upon if need be. So again, I'm happy to answer any specific questions. The Planning and Zoning Commission did not make a recommendation. We provided it for their information while we were continuing to learn more about it, and I just wanted to give the council a brief update.
I commend the County Planning and Zoning Commission. They spent so much time on this. And I got involved early on after having one of my informal conversations with Mayor Lang from Sycamore. And, you know, we pushed hard. I shouldn't say that. He pushed hard for the 3-mile setback. And then we discovered that there was that waiver possibility from the city. And I commend Joe Ellen for checking today to see that, in fact, that 1.5 mile setback from any of our municipal boundaries in the city of DeKalb is a statewide provision, so we're pretty well protected. There is that area where we could waive something if somebody made a proposal from 1.5 to 3 miles. But this is a situation where I think, and I'd be happy to open this up for any questions or conversation, but that I think the county, between the county draft ordinance and what they are gearing towards hearing more information on the 24th of September, and what we find as the municipality are rules and regulations set forth by the county and the state, we ought to be in pretty good shape. You know, unless someone on the council felt that we wanted to have the right to build a wind tower, you know, across the street, which appears that we don't have that authority.
We do. Actually, Mr. Mayor, according to our local ordinance, the wind WEX facility could be built on commercial or governmental
absolutely,
property here in town.
We have wind.
So if we wanted to put one on our building here, for example, we could do that.
So
they are limited to the cylindrical type rather than the blade.
And the height, too.
Correct.
Yeah. And you know, I think the main thing here is those big wind towers that we see in areas south and west of our community. Anything else? Thank you, Joellen.
Thank you.
Okay, we get to the point, reports, communications. Alderman Jacobson.
Alderman Faber and I are planning a combination ward meeting, back to school ward meeting. We are tentatively looking at September 30th at 3:30 p.m. at Westminster Church. Not feeling all that well. It's a little difficult to get it out tonight. But yes, we are planning in the ward meeting for residents of specifically wards 1 and 7, but I'm sure there'll be several guest appearances by residents of other wards, as there usually are.
But that's great. I mean, you guys, you know.
Anyone that wants to come out and have any questions about any city ordinance, whether it's the new parking restrictions, which I know are the hot topic in our neighborhoods right now, crime, safety, anything going on with the England North program, or effectively anything else that we do or people have issues with, they are welcome to come out and get to meet us, and I'm sure we will have some rousing conversation. And we will confirm that before the next city council meeting for certain, but again, September 30th, 3:30 p.m., Westminster Church on England Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Now a report from my alderman, Alderman Fanouken.
No report.
Alderman Marquardt.
The only thing I'd like to report is that The Packers won again last night. For those of you who are following good football, congratulations.
Alderman Fagan.
No comment, no report.
Alderman Noriko.
No report.
Alderman Verbeek.
Many thanks to the Dekalb Park District for completing some deferred maintenance in the 6th Ward. Quite an improvement.
Alderman Favor.
No report.
I'd like to just make one comment regarding some of the information that we've been reading about and hearing about regarding TIF. And there has been suggestions that the mayor is moving perhaps a little bit too quickly on working with some of our taxing partners. Believe me, I'm doing my best. There are times when I simply cannot contact each and every member of the city council. But I think from what we were able to achieve during the 2 joint review board meetings, and now having the next 30 days to further discuss some of the issues that have been brought up by some of our other taxing district partners, I think we're going to hopefully get to a situation where we as a council have the information about not only what it is that other taxing districts may be interested in, but also how that will impact on our decision going forward with the possibility of a new TIF district. So again, I appreciate the support of those council members who I have had the opportunity to talk with, and again, I will always do my very best to try to keep all of you, because we are partners as a city council, I'll try to keep you up to speed on things which I feel are important for us to all know about, and those things and I will try to be as timely as I possibly can. Okay? So, with that, let's go down the line here. First of all, Deputy City Clerk Ruth Scott.
No report.
City Clerk Len Fazekas.
Thank you. Wanted to talk a little bit about elections, the consolidated elections for April 2nd, 2019. Ballot petitions can start to be passed as of September 18th. That is for independent candidates and members of newly established parties. If that seems a little bit early, the petitions do not have to be collected until beginning on December 10th. So if people are interested in running, but they're wanting maybe, for example, to get past the November elections first, they'll still have time to do that because of the December, turning in December, and also because the ballot signature requirements are not too horrendous. For Ward 1, we're looking at ballot signatures minimum of 7, 57 max. Ward 3, 24 minimum, 74 max. Ward 5, 29 minimum, 79 max. And for Ward 7, 4 is the minimum for signatures with 54 maximum. So, so be sure anyone who is interested in running in any of the odd numbered wards, odd numbered, not odd, we want the ballot petitions to be independent, not nonpartisan. DeKalb's elections are partisan. If you're not running under a party banner, however, you want to choose independent.
Also, want to let you know that I am a deputy registrar with the county, and so if there is some interest in doing some voter registration here, I can do it.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dean Frieders.
No report.
Molly Talkington, our city manager.
No report.
Ray Munch, our assistant city manager.
Thank you. Just very briefly, an update on the city manager search. The position profile that was discussed at the August 27th COW meeting was given back to the council for review, and I received positive response from everyone on the city council. So as of last Tuesday, the position announcement is posted on the GovHR website, so we are officially taking applications for our next city manager. That period will remain open until October 8th, when GovHR will review the candidate pool and pass on a pool of qualified candidates to the city council for review. That's all.
Thank you. Gene Lowry, our police chief.
No report.
Eric Hicks, our fire chief.
Tomorrow marks 17 years as September 11, 2001, and just as we've done so in many years, we will be hosting a short memorial ceremony in front of Fire Station 1 starting at 8:40 in the morning with a moment of silence at 8:46.
Thank you,
All are
Eric.
welcome to attend.
Yeah, thank you. Joe Ellen Charlton, our community development director.
Attended a meeting today with Northwestern to go over the progress on the Wellness Center up on Bethany Road. The building is moving along quite nicely, and they're looking to have that completed by November 5th. They are feverishly working on the roadway improvements. If you recall, it's a very unique combination of City of Dekalb, City of Sycamore, and unincorporated jurisdictions all trying to work together to make that project happen. So we'll keep the board apprised of any changes to that, but so far they're on schedule.
Good. Thank you, Joe Ellen. Our Public Works Director, Tim Holdeman.
No report.
And our Information Technology Director, Mark Thorson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to let the public know that the website workshops will be beginning in late October, and the public should be seeing notification on that soon. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Dean, I understand that you're going to ask for an executive session?
That's correct, Mayor.
And I would read that. Approval to hold an executive session to discuss pending or imminent litigation as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C11. I'd ask the council for a motion to hold an executive session.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbeek?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Finucane?
Yes.
Marquardt?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 ayes.
We will now recess for executive session.